The rift opened like a wound across reality itself, tearing through the London skyline in a cascade of purple and black energy that made the air scream. Angstrom Levy's portals had punched holes between dimensions before, but this one was different, unstable, reaching further than intended, dragging something ancient through the spaces between worlds. The energy discharge vaporized 3 city blocks in an instant. When the light faded and the smoke cleared, a figure stood in the crater, 7 feet tall and wrapped in the tattered remnants of technology that sparked and died against his gray-blue skin. Ensabah Nur opened his eyes to a world that was not his own. He rose from the scorched earth, his body already regenerating from the dimensional transit that would have atomized a lesser being. Around him, humans screamed and fled, as they always had, across 5,000 years and apparently across realities. The pyramidal structures of celestial armor integrated into his flesh flickered, attempting to reconnect with technology that didn't exist in this universe. For the first time in millennia, Apocalypse felt the faintest whisper of vulnerability. But vulnerability was merely another test, and he had never failed a test. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. In every reality, only the strong survive. The sirens came first, primitive vehicles carrying armed humans in uniforms. Apocalypse watched them establish a perimeter with weapons that would have been impressive in the Bronze Age. A helicopter circled overhead, rotors thumping the air. He extended his senses, his molecular manipulation reaching out to taste this new world's composition, its energy signatures, its fundamental laws. The physics were similar, but not identical. The ambient radiation different. And there was something else, trace elements in the atmosphere that spoke of beings far stronger than these fleeing insects. "This is the Global Defense Agency," a voice boomed from speakers mounted on armored vehicles. "You are to remain still and submit to—" Apocalypse raised one hand. The molecular bonds of the lead vehicle came apart at his thought, steel and polymer separating into component atoms that drifted like metallic snow. The voice cut off mid-command. The other vehicles opened fire immediately, bullets, energy weapons, some kind of plasma discharge. The rounds flattened against his skin or were absorbed by his regenerating cellular structure. He had endured nuclear fire. These were gnats. But as he prepared to demonstrate the hierarchy of power, something moved in the sky. Something fast. The sonic boom arrived a half-second after the figure did. A young man in yellow and blue hovering 30 feet above the crater with fists clenched and an expression caught between determination and concern. Not flying by technology or mutation that Apocalypse could sense, but through sheer physical force overcoming gravity itself. "Interesting. I don't know who you are or where you came from," the boy said, and his voice carried the kind of earnest heroism that Apocalypse had heard from 1,000 champions across the centuries. But you need to stand down before anyone else gets hurt." Apocalypse studied him with eyes that had watched empires crumble. The boy was young, perhaps 17 or 18, with dark hair and a costume that proclaimed him a protector. But more importantly, the energy signature radiating from him was extraordinary. Not mutant, not enhanced, simply powerful. Naturally, overwhelmingly powerful. The kind of strength that evolution itself would bow to. "You speak of hurt, child, as if you could inflict it upon me," Apocalypse said, his voice resonating with the weight of ages. "I am Ensabah Nur. I am the first. I have drowned civilizations in their own weakness and raised monuments from the bones of the unworthy. In my world, I am evolution's judgment made flesh." The boy's expression hardened. "Yeah, well, this isn't your world. And evolution didn't ask you to judge anyone. Evolution requires no permission. It simply is. The strong thrive. The weak perish. This is the only law that matters." Apocalypse gestured to the fleeing humans, the damaged vehicles, the burning buildings. "You protect cattle. Why?" "Because they're people. Because strength means protecting those who can't protect themselves, not crushing them." The boy dropped lower, fists still raised. "Last chance. Stand down." Apocalypse smiled, and it was the smile of something vast and pitiless. "Show me your strength, young one. Prove you deserve to make demands. The boy moved. Not human fast, not even mutant fast, but with a speed that impressed even Apocalypse. The punch would have shattered a mountain, driven through reinforced steel like paper. It caught Apocalypse in the chest and sent him skidding backward, 50 feet, boots carving trenches in asphalt. Pain, actual pain, bloomed across his torso. His cellular structure absorbed the impact, already repairing microfractures in his enhanced bone structure. When was the last time something had hurt him? Apocalypse's smile widened. Yes, he breathed. You may be worthy after all. He surged forward, molecular manipulation accelerating his mass, and met the boy's second punch with his own. The shock wave shattered windows for 3 blocks. Cars flipped. The GDA agents were thrown back by the pressure wave. And in the sky above London, two beings who existed beyond normal human limits tested each other with the kind of violence that reshaped landscapes. The boy was strong, extraordinarily so, but Apocalypse had fought gods. He shifted his molecular density, making himself harder than diamond, and drove an elbow into the boy's ribs that sent him crashing through a building. He emerged seconds later, costume torn, blood at his lip, but already healing. Fascinating. Regeneration similar to Apocalypse's own. What are you? The boy gasped. I am what your kind fears to become. I am what evolution demands. Apocalypse extended his hand, and the rubble around them began to rise, molecules bending to his will, reshaping into crystalline spears. And you, child, you are strong enough to survive the culling. Perhaps even strong enough to thrive in what I will build here. I'm strong enough to stop you. The spears launched. The boy dodged most, tanked others, and came up swinging. They fought through streets and into the sky. Demand Apocalypse felt the thrill of genuine challenge for the first time in decades. This world had potential. This boy had potential. But potential was worthless without proper direction, without understanding that strength must be tempered by the willingness to cull weakness. Then something else entered his awareness. Multiple somethings. More powerful beings approaching from different vectors, drawn by the conflict like predators to blood in the water. And one of them radiated a power signature that made even the impressive boy seem almost ordinary. Apocalypse caught the boy's next punch and held him suspended, examining him with eyes that had dissected the genetics of countless species. You are not alone in your strength here. I sense others, many others. Tell me, child, what manner of world have I entered, in where beings such as you are not unique? The boy struggled in his grip, fear finally entering his eyes. Not fear for himself, but fear of what Apocalypse represented, what he might do. Let me go. Answer me first. The strong do not beg. This is Earth, the boy said through gritted teeth. And yeah, there are others like me, stronger than me, and if you keep this up, you're going to meet them real soon. Apocalypse released him and stepped back, molecular sensors drinking in every scrap of data about this reality. A world with multiple superpowered beings, a world where strength was perhaps more common than in his own. The implications were intoxicating. Then let them come, Apocalypse said. I will measure each one and determine their worth. This world will be tested, and only the fittest will survive. He turned away from the boy, ignoring him, and began walking through the ruined streets. Behind him, emergency services were arriving, civilians emerging from cover, and the boy was shouting something about surrender. Apocalypse paid no attention. He had tests to conduct, an evolution to guide. And if this world truly contained beings of genuine power, then perhaps, for the first time in 5,000 years, he would find rivals worthy of the name. The GDA agents parted before him without realizing they had made the choice to move. Survival instinct transcended universes. And in the sky above, unnoticed by Apocalypse, but recorded by satellite and seismic sensors around the globe, another figure watched the confrontation with eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. A man in white with a mustache and an expression of cold assessment. He had been on Earth for 20 years, Seed pretending to be its greatest hero while waiting for the order that would turn him into its conqueror. Omni-Man had seen many threats to Earth in his time here, but he had never seen anything quite like this. The Guardians of the Globe responded within minutes, assembling at their headquarters beneath the Pentagon with the kind of practiced efficiency that came from years of crisis management. War Woman checked her weapons. Aquarius tested his water manipulation. Green Ghost phased through the wall, her ethereal form solidifying beside Darkwing and Red Rush. The Immortal stood at the head of the conference table, arms crossed, his ancient features set in grim determination. He had lived for 3,000 years, fought beside and against countless warriors, and the footage they were reviewing troubled him in ways he couldn't quite articulate. "Run it again," he commanded. Cecil Stedman, director of the Global Defense Agency, obliged. The holographic display replayed Apocalypse's arrival, the dimensional rift, the molecular disintegration of the GDA vehicle, and most concerning, the fight with Invincible. Frame-by-frame analysis of punches that registered on seismic monitors, of a being who absorbed damage that would have killed normal enhanced individuals, of technology integrated into flesh in ways their scientists couldn't explain. "Invincible hit him hard enough to leave a crater in downtown London," Cecil said, his voice flat and matter-of-fact despite the cigar clenched between his teeth. "Our boy weighs 160 soaking wet and can bench press a aircraft carrier." This guy took it and smiled. "The molecular manipulation is the real concern," Robot said, his mechanical voice precise. "He disassembled a reinforced tactical vehicle at the atomic level without visible effort. If he can do that to matter, he can potentially do it to us." "Let him try," War Woman said, hefting her mace. "I've fought gods before." "So has he, apparently." Cecil pulled up intelligence compiled in the 90 minutes since Apocalypse's arrival. "We've got partial audio from the encounter. He claims to be 5,000 years old, calls himself Evolution's Judgment, and the tech grafted to his body doesn't match anything in our databases. It's more advanced than what we recovered from the Flaxons, maybe even Martian level." The Immortal leaned forward, studying Apocalypse's face frozen on screen. Something about those eyes, that bearing, triggered memories of ancient Egypt, of conquests and empires, of men who believed themselves chosen by gods to rule. "I know this one. Not him specifically, but his type. I've seen it before. He's not posturing. He genuinely believes humanity exists to be culled, tested, forced to evolve through conflict. Then we take him down before he starts his test," Darkwing said. "Agreed," Cecil said. "The President has authorized lethal force if necessary. Invincible bought us time. Our target's currently moving east through Poland, apparently sightseeing. We hit him with everything. We hit him fast, and we hit him before he finishes analyzing our capabilities." Green Ghost's ethereal form flickered uncertainly. "He hurt Invincible. Actually hurt him. How many beings on Earth can do that?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. Exactly one. And he was standing in this room pretending to be their colleague. Omni-Man straightened from where he'd been leaning against the wall, his white costume pristine, his expression thoughtful. "I'll come with you. If this threat is as serious as Cecil believes, you'll need maximum force." The Immortal met Omni-Man's gaze and nodded slowly. They'd fought together for 17 years, saved the world together a dozen times. The Immortal trusted him completely, the way you trusted a brother in arms. "Appreciated, Nolan. Your strength might tip the balance." If only he knew how right he was. Apocalypse stood atop the ruins of Auschwitz, molecular senses drinking in the psychic residue of suffering that still clung to this place like a stain on reality. Humanity's capacity for cruelty impressed him, not because he found the Holocaust abhorrent, but because it demonstrated the fundamental truth he'd always preached. The strong had identified the weak and culled them. Primitive, inelegant, wasteful, but philosophically pure. This world understood survival of the fittest, even if it pretended otherwise. His celestial technology was adapting, slowly, to this universe's parameters. The armor integrated into his cellular structure was beginning to interface with Earth's satellite network, drawing data, learning. This world had superpowered beings scattered across its surface. Not many, perhaps a few hundred, but far more than his own Earth had possessed. Most were weak, barely worth noticing, but several burned like stars in his awareness. The strongest was on this continent. We were in North America, A power signature that rivaled Thor, perhaps even surpassed the Hulk in raw output. And that one was approaching now, along with lesser lights. The guardians this world apparently relied upon to protect it. Apocalypse smiled. Time to judge their worth. They arrived as a unit, 7 figures descending from the sky or emerging from teleportation in a coordinated pattern that suggested tactical training. The Ancient One led them. Apocalypse could sense the temporal weight clinging to him, 3 millennia of accumulated experience. A kindred spirit, perhaps, if this warrior understood that age brought wisdom, and wisdom brought the knowledge that only strength mattered. In Saba Nur, the Ancient One called out, voice carrying across the empty field. I am the Immortal. You've attacked civilians, destroyed property, and assaulted a hero of this planet. Surrender now and you'll be treated fairly. Resist and we will use all necessary force to stop you. Apocalypse regarded them individually. The warrior woman with her enchanted weapons, strong but limited. The fish man who smelled of ocean and hubris, adequate. The speedster vibrating with kinetic energy, dangerous if properly utilized, but obviously young. The mechanical intelligence in its protective shell, clever but fragile. The ghost woman whose molecules phase between states, interesting, potentially challenging. The human in the bat costume, completely ordinary, absurdly outmatched, yet standing here anyway. Courage or stupidity. And then there was the 8th, the one in white standing slightly apart, with a power signature that made Apocalypse's enhanced senses scream warning. This one. This one was what evolution looked like when it succeeded without guidance. Perfect physical specimens, strength beyond human capacity, and something in the cellular structure that suggested alien origin, not Earthborn at all. You call yourselves guardians, Apocalypse said, his voice resonating with power. Guardians of what? Weakness? Stagnation? You protect cattle from the natural order. We protect people from monsters, the Immortal replied, drawing his axe. Last chance. No. Apocalypse's form began to shift, molecular structure rearranging, growing. His height increased to 10 feet, then 12, mass redistributing as armor plates emerged from his skin like geometric flowers blooming. Last chance is what I offer you. Join me. Embrace evolution's truth. Or prove your strength in combat and earn the right to stand against me. Red Rush moved first, as speedsters always did. Impatient, convinced their velocity made them untouchable. He became a blur, circling Apocalypse at supersonic speeds, landing dozens of strikes per second against armor. Ribs, skull. Each impact registered. Each one hurt, minutely. And each one gave Apocalypse data about velocity, force, timing. His hand lashed out and caught the speedster mid-stride. The molecular manipulation that made Apocalypse's reflexes superhuman allowed him to predict the pattern, accelerate his own motion to intersect with Red Rush's next position. He lifted the speedster by the throat and examined him like a butterfly pinned to a board. Speed without strategy is wasted potential, Apocalypse observed. Then he hurled Red Rush into War Woman with enough force to send both heroes crashing through the memorial wall. The others attacked in concert. War Woman recovered first, swinging her mace in an arc that crackled with divine energy. Apocalypse caught the weapon, absorbed a magical discharge into his celestial armor, and headbutted her hard enough to crack her helmet. Aquaris sent a pressurized water blade capable of cutting steel. It parted around Apocalypse's energy field like a stream around stone. Green Ghost phased through his body, attempting to disrupt his molecular structure from within. She screamed as she did. His cellular composition was too dense, too controlled, and touching his essence was like touching razor blades. She emerged gasping, blood trickling from her nose. Robot deployed drones that fired plasma and kinetic rounds in calculated patterns. Apocalypse simply grew another arm, then another, each limb ending in weapons formed from his own restructured flesh, blades, hammers, spears. He moved through the Guardians like a force of nature, not cruel, not angry, simply demonstrating the hierarchy. Darkwing actually landed a hit, some kind of explosive battering that detonated against Apocalypse's face. It stung. Apocalypse respected the courage even as he backhanded the human hard enough to send him ragdolling across the field. Unconscious before he hit the ground, but alive. The weak could still possess valor. The immortal proved more challenging. 3,000 years of combat experience meant something. His axe actually bit into Apocalypse's armor. It's drawing blood, real blood, for the first time since his arrival. They traded blows that shook the earth, warrior to warrior, and Apocalypse felt genuine satisfaction. This one understood strength. "You've lived long enough to know the truth," Apocalypse said, blocking an axe strike with his forearm. "The strong endure, the weak perish. Why do you fight against nature?" "Because nature needs a conscience," the immortal roared, pressing his attack. "Because strength without compassion is just tyranny. Compassion is the luxury of those who have already won." Apocalypse's fist caught the immortal in the chest, cracking ribs despite his enhanced durability. "You waste your immortality protecting those who would die regardless." They might have fought for hours. The immortal was truly formidable, perhaps even capable of stalemating Apocalypse if he fought with full tactical support. But he would never get the chance to find out, because Omni-Man chose that moment to stop pretending. The punch came from Apocalypse's blind side, moving faster than sound, faster than thought, with enough force behind it to shatter continents. It caught him in the ribs and sent him tumbling through the air like a leaf in a hurricane. He crashed through trees, through the memorial building, through the parking lot, leaving a trench half a mile long before he managed to arrest his momentum. Apocalypse rose slowly, molecular regeneration already healing fractured bones and ruptured organs. That had hurt. That had actually, genuinely, impressively hurt. He looked up to see the one in white descending slowly, deliberately, and with an expression that Apocalypse recognized immediately, the face of someone who had been holding back for a very, very long time. "You talk about strength," Omni-Man said, his voice utterly calm. "About evolution and survival of the fittest. You have no idea what those words actually mean." Apocalypse's smile returned, wider than before, tinged with genuine delight. "Finally, show me, alien. Prove you are not simply another pretender to power." Behind Omni-Man, the Guardians were picking themselves up, preparing to rejoin the fight. The Immortals shouted something about coordinated assault. None of them understood yet. None of them saw what Apocalypse saw in Omni-Man's eyes. This was not a hero coming to save them. This was an apex predator deciding whether Apocalypse was prey or competition. When Omni-Man and Apocalypse hung suspended in the air above the ruins, 50 feet apart, two beings who existed beyond normal scales of power, taking each other's measure. The Guardians watched from below, battered and confused by the sudden shift in dynamics. The Immortal gripped his axe tighter, some instinct screaming warning, even though he couldn't identify the source. War Woman rose unsteadily, watching the tableau with growing unease. "Nolan?" she called up. "What are you—" "Stay back," Omni-Man said without looking at her. His eyes never left Apocalypse. "All of you. This doesn't concern you anymore." Apocalypse's enhanced senses analyzed the alien before him, drinking in data that his celestial technology translated into comprehensible terms. The cellular structure was extraordinary. Each cell a fusion reactor in miniature, generating power through some kind of exotic atomic process. The muscle density exceeded anything Earth biology could produce. The skeletal structure could withstand forces that would liquefy adamantium, and the nervous system processed information fast enough to track objects moving at significant fractions of light speed. This was not enhancement or mutation. This was a species that had evolved, or engineered itself, into the perfect physical form. "Viltrumite," Apocalypse said, and it wasn't a question. His technology had pulled the word from intercepted satellite transmissions, fragmented intelligence reports, whispered legends in military databases. "Your kind conquered 500 worlds before you came here. You hide among humans, pretending to protect them, while waiting for orders to subjugate them." The other Guardians went still. The Immortal's face drained of color. Omni-Man's expression didn't change. "You've been here less than 2 hours and you already know that. Impressive. What else does your technology tell you? That you are alone? That you have been here for 20 years? That you have a human wife and a son, the boy I fought? Half human, half Viltrumite. An abomination by your people's standards, I suspect, yet potentially more powerful than either parent. Apocalypse's smile widened. And that you have not told these guardians what you really are. They believe you their friend. Nolan, the immortal said slowly, axe lowering. Tell me this is wrong. Tell me you're not. I am exactly what he says I am, Omni-Man said flatly. He still didn't look at them. I was sent here to prepare Earth for Viltrumite annexation, to weaken it from within, to ensure that when the Empire arrives, resistance would be minimal. Warwoman raised her mace. Robots' drones targeted Omni-Man. Aquaris summoned water from the ground. Green Ghost began phasing. Red Rush vibrated, ready to move. Darkwing was unconscious, bleeding on the ground, mercifully unaware that their entire world had just collapsed. Then we stop you first, the immortal said, and his voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of betrayals, of friendships shattered, of trust broken. Before we stop him, Omni-Man turned to look at them then, and the expression on his face was almost pitying. You can't stop me. You never could. I've been pulling my punches for 17 years. Do you understand? Every time we fought together, and on every crisis we resolved, I was using a fraction of my actual strength. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. Nolan. My name is Nolan Grayson of Viltrum, and right now, you need to decide if you want to die fighting me or live long enough to fight him. He gestured at Apocalypse. Because whatever you think I am, whatever the Empire will eventually do to this planet, it will be merciful compared to what he represents. Apocalypse laughed, the sound resonating across the battlefield. The alien speaks truth. I have no interest in merely conquering your world. Conquest is meaningless without evolution. I will test every human, every enhanced being, every genetic aberration. The strong will be elevated, the weak will be eliminated, and from the ashes a perfect civilization will emerge. You see, Omni-Man said, he's insane. Viltrumites are brutal, but we're not insane. We conquer efficiently. We preserve functional populations. He wants to burn the world down and rebuild it in his image. And this, Apocalypse said, genuinely delighted, is why you interest me, Viltrumite. You are a conqueror who pretends his conquest has purpose beyond strength. You tell yourself you serve an empire, a cause, a greater good. But in truth, you simply enjoy the power, the domination, the feeling of standing above weaker beings. Something flickered in Omni-Man's expression. Anger, perhaps, or recognition. I serve the Viltrumite Empire because they represent the pinnacle of evolution, Omni-Man said. The strongest civilization in the galaxy. We bring order to chaos. You serve because you were born into servitude and never questioned it, Apocalypse countered. Your empire made you a slave to their ideology, pointed you at this world like a weapon. You are strong, yes, extraordinarily so, but you are not free, and freedom is the prerequisite for true power. Below, the Guardians were backing away slowly, unconsciously. This conversation was happening above their level, literally and figuratively. Warwoman grabbed Darkwing's unconscious form. The Immortal made a sharp gesture. Tactical retreat. They'd regroup, plan, coordinate with Cecil. Figure out how to fight two threats that had just been revealed as far beyond their capability to handle. Omni-Man let them go. His attention was entirely on Apocalypse now, and something in his posture had changed, become less certain. I have a wife, Omni-Man said quietly, a son. I've lived among humans for 2 decades. I've saved them, fought beside them. I protected them. And when the Empire comes, I'll have to help destroy them. Not because I want to, because it's my purpose. Purpose assigned by others is not purpose at all. It is merely obedience. Apocalypse descended until he stood on the scorched earth, and Omni-Man followed, landing across from him. They stood like gunslingers, 50 feet apart, the most powerful beings on the planet sizing each other up. Tell me, Nolan Grayson, when you look at your son, the boy who carries both human weakness and Viltrumite strength, do you see a mistake, or do you see evolution itself? Omni-Man's jaw clenched. Mark is complicated. Mark is proof that your empire's ideology is flawed, that mixing with inferior species doesn't create weakness. It creates potential, Apocalypse's voice carried the conviction of 5,000 years observing genetic drift and selection pressure. Your people avoid genetic mixing because they fear it will dilute Viltrumite purity. But purity is stagnation. Only through testing, through conflict, through the combination of strong traits can true evolution occur. That's not... Omni-Man stopped himself. You're trying to manipulate me. I am trying to free you. There is a difference. Apocalypse began walking forward, slowly, arms spread in an almost welcoming gesture. You are powerful beyond measure. You could rule this world yourself if you chose. Instead, you wait for permission from an empire thousands of light years away. An empire that will see your half-human son as an aberration to be eliminated. Or an empire that will make you choose between loyalty and love. Omni-Man's fists clenched so hard the air around them compressed. The empire is the empire. My feelings don't matter. Then you have already chosen. Apocalypse stopped 20 feet away. You will betray your son to preserve your purpose. You will kill the human woman you married. You will destroy the friendships you have built here. All because evolution terrifies you more than servitude. Stop talking. I have seen this before. Warriors who serve empires, gods, ideologies, anything except their own will. They tell themselves service gives meaning, but when the time comes to act, they discover their meaning was always imposed from outside. And they break. Apocalypse's eyes glowed with ancient power. You are already breaking, Viltrumite. I can see it. The cracks where doubt has infiltrated certainty. I said stop. Make me. The punch came at Mach 3, faster than sound, faster than most enhanced beings could perceive. Apocalypse raised his arm and caught Omni-Man's fist in his palm. The shockwave from the stop momentum flattened trees for 100 yards in every direction. Apocalypse slid backward 12 feet, boots carving trenches, but he held. Omni-Man stared at his caught fist in disbelief. That's impossible. Nothing on Earth can stop me when I'm moving that fast. I am not from Earth, Apocalypse said. I am older than your empire. I have fought Celestials and survived. Your strength is impressive, but strength without technique is amateur. He twisted Omni-Man's arm and drove a palm strike into his solar plexus that sent the Viltrumite rocketing backward through the sound barrier. Omni-Man crashed through a forest, tumbling end over end before arresting his momentum. He floated back up, and for the first time, there was blood at the corner of his mouth. You actually hurt me, Omni-Man said, touching the blood with one finger. Nothing on Earth has hurt me since I arrived. Then perhaps, Apocalypse said, his form shifting again, growing denser, heavier, molecular bonds reinforcing to withstand Viltrumite-level impacts. You have been pretending for too long, fighting children and calling yourself strong, protecting insects and calling it purpose, waiting for an empire that may never come, or may come only to find you've gone native. Omni-Man wiped the blood away. I should kill you, right now, before you become a real threat. You should try. They collided midair with enough force to shatter windows in Warsaw, fists like meteors moving faster than human perception, each impact releasing energy equivalent to tactical nuclear weapons. Apocalypse matched Omni-Man's speed through molecular acceleration, his cellular manipulation allowing him to reinforce impact points nanoseconds before collision. They tumbled through the stratosphere, trading blows that left contrails in their wake. Omni-Man was faster. Apocalypse was more versatile. The Viltrumite's attacks were brutally efficient, economical, perfected through millennia of warfare. Apocalypse fought like a shapeshifter, changing density and mass mid-strike, to growing additional limbs to grapple, firing energy blasts from celestial technology. Neither could gain a decisive advantage. They crashed back to Earth in Romania, cratering a mountainside. Apocalypse pinned Omni-Man and drove a blade grown from his own forearm toward the Viltrumite's eye. Omni-Man caught the blade inches from his face, strained, snapped it off, and headbutted Apocalypse hard enough to crack his celestial armor. They separated, circled, crashed together again. You fight well for a slave, Apocalypse taunted. You talk a lot for someone who's losing, Omni-Man shot back. But they both knew the truth. They were evenly matched, and that realization changed everything. Omni-Man landed first, breathing hard, Not from exhaustion, but from exertion he hadn't felt in decades. Apocalypse touched down across from him. Thin armor cracked, regeneration already sealing wounds, a smile of pure satisfaction on his ancient face. "When was the last time you fought someone who could match you?" Apocalypse asked. Omni-Man didn't answer immediately. Then quietly, "Never. Not on this planet." "And does it feel like slavery? Or does it feel like freedom?" The question hung in the air between them like a blade. And in that moment, while they stood balanced on the knife's edge between continued violence and something else, reality shifted. Because both of them became aware of the same thing simultaneously. Another power signature, approaching from orbit. Not as strong as Omni-Man, not as versatile as Apocalypse, but powerful enough to matter, and familiar to one of them. Omni-Man's face went pale. "No, not yet. It's too soon." "What approaches?" Apocalypse demanded. Another Viltrumite," Omni-Man said, and for the first time there was genuine fear in his voice. "They've sent someone to check on me, to see if I've completed my mission." He looked at Apocalypse with an expression caught between desperation and calculation. "If they find out about you, about the Guardians figuring out what I am, about my son, then perhaps," Apocalypse said slowly, "you and I should discuss terms." The Viltrumite descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, friction igniting the air around her in a corona of superheated plasma. She was female, tall and powerful, with the characteristic dark hair and white uniform that marked her as one of Viltrum's elite warriors. Her name was Anissa, and she had been dispatched to Earth on what should have been a routine status check. 20 years was a long time for a preparation mission, even by Viltrumite standards. The Empire wanted confirmation that Nolan Grayson remained loyal, remained effective, remained Viltrumite. What she found instead was her fellow warrior standing in a crater alongside something that made her enhanced senses scream warnings she'd never experienced before. Anissa landed 50 yards away, touching down with the kind of controlled precision that spoke to centuries of combat experience. Her eyes moved between Omni-Man and Apocalypse, cataloging threats, assessing power levels, calculating tactical options. The gray skin being radiated energy signatures she couldn't classify. The technology grafted to its flesh operated on principles her training didn't cover. And the way it smiled at her suggested it knew exactly how dangerous she was and found her amusing. "Nolan," she said, voice carrying across the distance with Viltrumite clarity, "the Empire sent me to evaluate your progress. 20 years is a generous timeline for subjugation preparation, but Command expects results. Status report." Omni-Man's jaw worked silently for a moment. Apocalypse could see the calculations running behind his eyes. Truth or deception, loyalty or survival, empire or everything he'd built here. The Viltrumite was trapped between identities, and the arrival of his own kind had forced the choice he'd been avoiding. "The situation is more complex than anticipated," Omni-Man said carefully. "Earth's defenders are more organized than initial reconnaissance suggested. And I've been systematically undermining their coordination and preparing strategic weaknesses for the invasion force. But certain complications have arisen." Anissa's eyes narrowed. "What complications?" Apocalypse laughed, the sound rolling across the battlefield like thunder. "Oh, this is delightful. Shall I tell her, Nolan Grayson? Or will you?" "Silence," Omni-Man hissed. "Who is this?" Anissa demanded, her posture shifting into combat readiness. "What is this?" "I am En Saba Nur," Apocalypse said, taking a step forward. Anissa immediately rose 6 inches off the ground, fists clenched, prepared to strike at supersonic speeds. He continued unbothered. "I am the first mutant of my world, born 5,000 years ago when humanity was young and weak. I have toppled civilizations, reshaped species, and stood against beings your empire would call gods. And I arrived on this planet approximately 3 hours ago through an interdimensional accident." Anissa processed this information with Viltrumite efficiency. "An extra-dimensional incursion. That's a command-level threat. Nolan, why haven't you eliminated it?" "Because," Apocalypse said before Omni-Man could respond, "your fellow warrior discovered that I am not easily eliminated. We fought to a stalemate, and in the process of our battle, we had a rather illuminating conversation about the nature of power, purpose, and slavery." "Slavery," Anissa's voice went cold. Choose your next words carefully, creature. Viltrumites bow to no one. No? Apocalypse gestured at Omni-Man. Then why does he stand on this primitive world, pretending to be its hero? I'm waiting for your empire's permission to act? Why does he hide his strength, suppress his nature, obey orders from beings thousands of light years away? That sounds remarkably like servitude to me. Anissa moved, not as fast as Omni-Man. She was younger, perhaps only 800 years old, but fast enough that most beings would have been obliterated before they registered motion. Her fist drove toward Apocalypse's skull with enough force to shatter a moon. Apocalypse caught her wrist, molecular manipulation allowing him to match her velocity for a critical microsecond, and redirected her momentum into the ground. Anissa cratered the earth, astonished that anything on this backward planet could touch her. She erupted upward immediately, battle rage igniting, and found Apocalypse waiting with a smile. You are strong, he observed, blocking her follow-up strikes with forearms that rang like iron bells. Stronger than most beings I've encountered. Your cellular structure is magnificent, but you are young, and youth brings recklessness. She drove a knee toward his midsection. He grew a third arm to catch it. Her eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise a trained Viltrumite would permit. And then she was spinning, using the trapped limb as leverage to whip her other leg in a roundhouse that caught Apocalypse across the temple. The impact would have decapitated a mountain. Apocalypse's head rocked sideways. His neck absorbed the kinetic energy, cellular bonds flexing and reforming. He turned back to look at her, blood trickling from a split in his cheek that sealed itself even as she watched. Better, he said. You adapt quickly. A valuable trait. Nolan, Anissa shouted, still grappling with the gray-skinned nightmare that refused to die. Assistance would be appreciated. Omni-Man floated 20 feet away, arms crossed, watching, not helping. His expression was unreadable. Nolan, she repeated. Let her test herself, Omni-Man said quietly. She wanted to evaluate Earth's threats. This is Earth's newest threat. Let's see how she handles it. Anissa's eyes flickered toward him for just a nanosecond, and that instant of divided attention cost her. Apocalypse's hand closed around her throat, not crushing but restraining, and his other hand pressed against her sternum. Molecular sensors invaded her cellular structure, reading, analyzing, understanding. Fascinating, he breathed. Your biology is even more refined than I initially assessed. Each cell operates as an independent fusion reactor, drawing power from atomic bonds in ways that seem almost magical. Your muscle tissue is denser than neutronium, yet maintains flexibility. Your nervous system processes information at relativistic speeds. Your people engineered themselves into the perfect warrior species. Release me, Anissa growled, struggling against his grip. She could break free. He wasn't applying enough pressure to truly restrain a Viltrumite. But the casual way he held her, as if she were a specimen to examine, infuriated her more than actual combat. In a moment, I'm learning. His eyes glowed with celestial energy. You are approximately 800 years old. You have personally conquered 17 planets. You have killed thousands of beings in service to your empire, and you feel nothing about any of it. No remorse, no pride, simply duty. How? Your cells remember. Trauma leaves signatures. Violence writes itself into the body at the molecular level. He released her abruptly and stepped back. You are what Nolan will become if he continues serving Viltrum. A perfect weapon, empty of everything except purpose. Anissa straightened, rubbing her throat even though he hadn't actually damaged it. And what's wrong with purpose? Purpose creates order. Order creates civilization. Viltrum has brought stability to 500 worlds that would have destroyed themselves through tribal conflicts and resource wars. Viltrum has brought subjugation, Apocalypse corrected. There is a difference between evolution through conflict and simple domination. Evolution requires the strong to rise naturally, while your empire simply crushes anyone who might become strong enough to challenge it. We are the strong, Anissa said flatly. We won. That's how evolution works. The superior species dominates the inferior. Apocalypse smiled. And yet here you are, On a planet you were supposed to conquer, and a half-human hybrid just gave me a fight worth remembering. Your fellow warrior stands conflicted between his orders and his family, and an extra-dimensional being is lecturing you about evolution. Tell me, warrior of Viltrum, does this feel like domination to you? Anissa's fists clenched. She looked at Omni-Man, really looked at him, and saw something she'd never seen in a Viltrumite before. Uncertainty. Nolan, what is he talking about? What hybrid? Omni-Man closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, when they carried the weight of 20 years of secrets. I have a son, half human. His name is Mark. He's 17 years old and his powers are beginning to manifest. He's stronger than I was at his age. The silence that followed was absolute. Anissa stared at Omni-Man as if he'd grown a second head. You bred with a native, she said slowly. You created a hybrid. You committed genetic contamination. I fell in love, Omni-Man said, and his voice carried a defiance that surprised even him. I spent 20 years preparing this world for conquest, and in that time I built a life. I married a human woman. I raised a son. I made friends. I saved people. And yes, I knew it was temporary. I knew eventually I'd have to tear it all down. But you hesitated, Apocalypse finished. And hesitation is the first step toward freedom, or toward betrayal, depending on your perspective. Anissa's expression hardened into something carved from stone. This is a command-level contamination. Nolan, you know the protocols. Hybrid offspring are terminated, native attachments are severed, compromised operatives are recalled for re-education or eliminated. I have to report this. I know, Omni-Man said quietly. Unless, Apocalypse interjected, you don't. Both Viltrumites turned to look at him. He stood there, ancient and terrible and smiling like he'd just won a game they didn't know they were playing. Explain, Anissa demanded. Nolan Grayson is correct to hesitate, Apocalypse said. Not because love or family matter, though they do in their way, but because his son represents something your empire fears. True evolution. The combination of Viltrumite power with human adaptability. You said yourself he's stronger than Nolan was at the same age. That means his potential exceeds pure Viltrumite genetics, which means your empire's ideology is provably false. Our ideology has conquered 500 worlds, Anissa said, and how many of those worlds possessed beings who could challenge you? How many actually tested whether Viltrumites truly are the superior species? Apocalypse began circling them slowly, lecturing as he'd lectured to emperors and mutants for 5 millennia. You dominate the weak and call it evolution, but evolution requires selection pressure, competition, the possibility of failure. Your empire has eliminated all meaningful competition, which means you've stopped evolving. You're stagnant, dying slowly while pretending your strength matters. We are not dying, Anissa said, but something in her voice suggested uncertainty. No? Then why does your empire send single operatives to prepare worlds for conquest instead of simply invading immediately? Why take 20 years to soften resistance when you could obliterate a planet in hours? He stopped circling and faced them both. Because there are fewer of you than there used to be. Because Viltrumite reproduction is slow and getting slower. Because the virus weakened you, and you're terrified that another species might exploit that weakness. Anissa's face went blank. How do you know about the virus? I pulled it from your genetic memory while I held you. A disease that killed 99% of your population 800 years ago. Your empire pretends it recovered, but in truth, you're barely maintaining your numbers. Every Viltrumite is precious now. Every loss hurts, which is why conquest has become a slow, careful process instead of the blitzkrieg it used to be. Omni-Man's expression suggested this confirmed suspicions he'd held but never voiced. Anissa looked like she wanted to deny it but couldn't. You're manipulating us, she said finally. I'm offering you truth, Apocalypse corrected. Your empire is dying. Nolan's hybrid son might be the key to saving it. Fresh genetic material, new evolutionary paths, strength that exceeds the old bloodlines. But your ideology won't permit that solution because it requires admitting you're not perfect. So instead, you'll kill the boy, punish Nolan, and continue your slow extinction while conquering meaningless worlds. What do you want? Omni-Man asked. I want to see what happens when evolution is permitted to run its course without ideological constraints. I want to test this world properly, to separate the truly strong from the pretenders. And I want allies who understand that strength without purpose is wasted potential. Apocalypse's smile widened. Help me test this world. Let me evaluate every enhanced being, every genetic anomaly, every potential successor to the Viltrumite legacy. Together we determine who is truly worthy. And perhaps in the process you discover whether your son is a mistake or the future. Anissa shook her head. This is insane. We should kill you and report back to command. You should try, Apocalypse agreed. But you already fought me alone and failed, and I suspect Nolan won't help you this time. Will you, Grayson? All eyes turned to Omni-Man, the warrior who had pretended to be Earth's greatest hero, the father who had raised a half-human son, the operative who had failed his 20-year mission. He stood at the crossroads of every identity he'd built, and the choice he made now would determine everything that followed. I need time, Omni-Man said finally, to think, to decide. Time is a luxury, Anissa said. We have duties. Then you return to Viltrum and report that Earth preparation continues on schedule, Omni-Man said, his voice hardening into command tone. You tell them I'm managing complications. You don't mention my son, this being, or any of this conversation. Give me 6 months to resolve it. Or, Anissa asked. Omni-Man's eyes met hers, and for the first time, the full weight of his power radiated unchecked. Or we find out whether I can kill a Viltrumite before you reach orbit to call for help. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Anissa calculated odds, assessed variables, and came to the conclusion that Omni-Man was serious, and older, and stronger, and possibly insane. 6 months, she said finally. But if I find out you've betrayed the Empire, Nolan, I'll kill you myself, orders or no orders. She shot into the sky without another word, breaking the sound barrier in seconds, leaving only a contrail and the certainty that the clock was now ticking. Apocalypse and Omni-Man stood alone in the crater, two beings powerful enough to reshape the planet, each one wondering if they just made an ally or doomed themselves. You just declared independence from your empire, Apocalypse observed. How does it feel? Omni-Man didn't answer, and he was staring at the sky where Anissa had disappeared, probably wondering the same thing. The Pentagon Situation Room had never felt smaller. Cecil Stedman stood at the head of the table, cigar smoke curling around his face like a ghost, while satellite feeds displayed the aftermath of 3 separate superhuman battles across Europe. The Guardians of the Globe sat in various states of injury and shock. War Woman's helmet cracked, the Immortal's ribs wrapped in regenerative bandages, Robot's shell-dented, Green Ghost flickering in and out of tangibility from exhaustion. Red Rush vibrated nervously. Darkwing was in medical, skull fracture and concussion, severe enough that even his enhanced physiology needed time. And at the far end of the table, looking more haggard than anyone had seen him in 17 years, sat Invincible, Mark Grayson. The boy who'd just learned his father was an alien sleeper agent sent to conquer Earth. So let me make sure I understand the situation, Cecil said, his voice flat and cold. Omni-Man, excuse me, Nolan Grayson of Viltrum, has been lying to us for 2 decades. He's not a hero. He's an advanced scout for an empire of superpowered fascists who plan to enslave our planet. Is that about right? The Immortal nodded grimly. He admitted it, said he's been pulling his punches for years, that if he wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. And this new threat, Apocalypse, fought both Invincible and the Guardians to a standstill, then fought Omni-Man to a draw before another Viltrumite showed up. Cecil's cigar glowed brighter as he inhaled. And after some kind of conversation we couldn't monitor because our satellites mysteriously malfunctioned, Ador, the second Viltrumite left, and Apocalypse and Omni-Man separated without killing each other? That's the situation, War Woman confirmed. Sir, we need to consider that they might be working together now. Mark flinched at that. His hands gripped the edge of the table hard enough to crack the reinforced polymer. My dad wouldn't... Your dad is a sleeper agent for an alien empire, Cecil interrupted, not unkindly but without mercy either. Everything you think you know about him is a lie. Everything he's told you, every moment you've shared, was part of a 20-year cover operation. I'm sorry, kid, but we need to start thinking of him as enemy number one. He's still my father, Mark said, voice breaking. He's also powerful enough to crack this planet in half if he decides to stop pretending, Cecil said. Humahi, which brings us to our current problem. We now have two existential threats. Omni-Man, who we can't kill and can't trust, and Apocalypse, who appears to be equally unkillable and is spouting social Darwinist philosophy about culling the weak. And we have no effective countermeasures against either of them. Robot's mechanical voice cut through the tension. I've been analyzing the footage of Apocalypse's molecular manipulation. He's operating at the atomic level, restructuring matter through some combination of technology and innate ability. Theoretically, if we could disrupt his concentration or overload his processing capacity, theoretically doesn't help us, Cecil said. We need practical solutions. Weapons that can actually hurt Viltrumites. Strategies for fighting enemies who can move faster than missiles and hit harder than nukes. There might be something, the immortal said slowly. All eyes turned to him. He looked older than his 3,000 years, the weight of revealed betrayal making him seem almost fragile. I've fought alongside Nolan for 17 years. I know his patterns, his tells, the way he fights when he's holding back versus when he's serious. If it comes down to it, if we have to fight him, he paused, jaw clenching. I might be able to hurt him, not kill him, but slow him down long enough for others to act. You'd die, War Woman said quietly. Probably, the immortal agreed. But I've died before, I get better, and if it saves this planet from slavery, it's worth it. Mark shot to his feet. You're talking about killing my father. We're talking about stopping an invasion, Cecil said. Your father is part of that invasion, whether you want to accept it or not. Now sit down, Mark. You're one of 3 beings on this planet who might actually survive a fight with him, which means we need you thinking clearly, not emotionally. 3? Green Ghost asked. Invincible, Apocalypse, and Omni-Man himself, Cecil clarified. Everyone else is cannon fodder if Nolan decides to go hostile, which is why we need to shift strategies. Robot, I want you working on weapons development. Immortal, you're training Mark in combat techniques that might work against Viltrumite physiology. War Woman, coordinate with international heroes, anyone with magic, exotic physics, or reality warping abilities. If there's something that can hurt Viltrumites, I want to know about it. An Apocalypse? Red Rush asked, his voice vibrating with barely contained energy. He's still out there, still a threat. Cecil pulled up a satellite feed showing a grainy image of Apocalypse standing in the ruins of ancient Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, apparently examining the prehistoric stone pillars with scientific interest. He's been visiting ancient sites, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Turkey, Greece, places where early civilizations developed. Our analysts think he's looking for something. Or establishing bases, Robot suggested. He mentioned reshaping civilization. Historical sites would be symbolically significant for someone with his ideology. Either way, we can't touch him without risking another fight we can't win, Cecil said. So we monitor, we prepare, and we hope he stays focused on archaeology instead of genocide. In the meantime, the alarms went off. Red lights, klaxons, the works. Cecil's communicator erupted with overlapping reports. Robot's shell interfaces lit up with data streams. Every screen in the Situation Room switched to the same feed. Downtown Chicago, collapsing into chaos. Apocalypse was no longer interested in archaeology. Mark flew toward Chicago at supersonic speeds, the Guardians struggling to keep pace. Below, the city was transforming, literally transforming. Buildings were growing, their molecular structures being rewritten in real time. Concrete flowed like water, reshaped into pyramidal structures, steel beams twisted into geometric patterns that hurt to look at, and in the center of it all, standing atop what had been Willis Tower and was now becoming something else entirely, stood Apocalypse. He'd changed since their first fight. The celestial armor was more prominent, covering more of his body in sleek geometric plates that pulsed with energy. He'd grown to 15 feet tall, a giant made of living metal and ancient flesh. And around him, kneeling in concentric circles, were people. Hundreds of them. Civilians who should have been fleeing, but instead stood perfectly still, eyes glowing with faint blue light. "What did he do to them?" War Woman asked, horror in her voice. "Evolution." Apocalypse's voice boomed across the city, amplified by technology or power or both. "I have tested them, analyzed their genetic potential, separated the wheat from the chaff. These are the strong, the worthy, the ones who will inherit the earth I am building." Mark landed on a nearby rooftop, the guardians touching down around him. Up close, he could see that the kneeling people weren't in pain. They looked peaceful, content, like they'd found purpose. "Let them go," Mark demanded. "They are free," Apocalypse replied. "Freer than they have ever been. I have unlocked their latent potential, enhanced their cellular structure, elevated them beyond baseline humanity. Look at them, boy. They are becoming something greater." One of the kneeling figures stood, a woman, perhaps 30, wearing business attire that was now torn and scorched. Her skin had taken on a faint metallic sheen. When she clenched her fist, the concrete beneath her cracked. She looked at her enhanced body with wonder. "I can feel it," she whispered. "The strength, the power. Yet he gave this to me." "He's controlling you," Mark said. "He's freeing us," another voice said. A man stood, then another, then dozens more. All of them enhanced, all of them loyal. "We were weak, helpless. He made us strong." The immortal stepped forward, axe ready. "Apocalypse, this isn't evolution, it's indoctrination." "Is there a difference?" Apocalypse asked, genuinely curious. "Evolution requires selective pressure. I am providing that pressure. Those with the genetic potential to withstand my enhancements survive. Those without do not. It is the fundamental law of nature." "How many?" Green Ghost asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How many didn't survive?" Apocalypse's expression didn't change. 43%, an acceptable ratio for the first round of testing. "I know I will refine the process." Mark felt rage building in his chest, hot and pure. "You killed hundreds of people. I eliminated the weak and elevated the strong. In one afternoon, I have advanced human evolution by 1,000 years. These enhanced individuals will reproduce, passing their superior genetics to the next generation. In a century, baseline humanity will be extinct, replaced by a species worthy of survival." Apocalypse spread his arms wide. "This is my gift to your world. This is what I offer instead of Viltrumite conquest. Not slavery, but transformation." "It's still slavery," War Woman said. "You're just changing what we're enslaved to." "Everyone serves something," Apocalypse countered. "Governments, religions, ideologies, base instincts. I offer service to strength itself, to the principle that has governed life since its inception. Adapt or perish, evolve or go extinct." The enhanced humans began moving, forming a protective perimeter around Apocalypse. There were hundreds of them now, and they moved with unnatural coordination. Not mind control exactly, but something close. Unified purpose, shared conviction. Robot sensors analyze the enhanced humans rapidly. Their cellular structure has been completely rewritten. Increased muscle density, enhanced nervous systems, redundant organ systems. They're not quite Viltrumite level, but each one is now stronger than Olympic athletes and nearly bulletproof. "If they're willing to fight us, we're outnumbered and outgunned," Red Rush finished. Mark looked at the enhanced humans, saw the conviction in their eyes, and recognized something horrifying. They believed Apocalypse. They genuinely thought he'd saved them, given them purpose, made them better. And maybe in some twisted way he had. They were stronger. They would survive situations that would kill normal humans. They would pass those advantages to their children. Was that enough to justify the 43% who died screaming? "Stand down, Invincible," Apocalypse said. "You cannot win this fight. I have an army now. An army that grows with every person I test and elevate. Attack me and they will defend me. Kill them, and you become what you claim to oppose. Someone who murders the weak to serve your ideology." It was a trap, a perfect moral trap. Fight and become a killer. Surrender and let Apocalypse continue his eugenics program. There was no good choice. which is when Omni-Man landed between Mark and Apocalypse, faster than anyone had seen him move before. Enough, Nolan Grayson said. His voice carried across the city with Viltrumite authority. Apocalypse, we had an agreement. You said you wanted allies. This is an alliance. This is you forcing my hand. Apocalypse cocked his head, studying the Viltrumite with interest. Is it? I'm doing exactly what you should have done 20 years ago, preparing this world for transformation. The only difference is, my methods are honest. I don't pretend to be a hero while plotting conquest. You're killing people, Omni-Man said. So have you. So has your empire. So has every conqueror in history. Apocalypse descended from his pyramid, shrinking back to 8 feet tall, his armor receding slightly. The question is not whether people will die. Hui, the question is whether their deaths serve evolution or merely serve power. My enhanced humans will thrive. Will Viltrum's conquered populations? Omni-Man didn't answer. Behind him, Mark stared at his father's back, fists clenched, torn between hope that Nolan was here to help and fear that he was here to join Apocalypse. I came here, Omni-Man said slowly, because my son is here, because this city is on Earth, because I've lived on this planet for 20 years, and these are... He paused, struggling with the words. These are my people too. I won't let you slaughter them for an experiment. Then stop me, Apocalypse challenged. The enhanced humans tensed. The Guardians readied weapons. Mark's heart hammered against his ribs. The entire city held its breath. And Nolan Grayson, Omni-Man, through the Viltrumite warrior who'd been sent to conquer Earth, made his choice. Mark, he said without turning, get the civilians out of the transformation zone. Guardians, evacuate the surrounding area. Apocalypse has enhanced humans as shields, but I'm betting he won't let them die to save himself. We're going to test that theory. Dad? Mark's voice was small, hopeful. Do it now, Omni-Man commanded, then quieter. Trust me. One more time. Please. Mark moved. Not because he trusted his father, not fully, not anymore, but because people needed saving, and that was something he understood. The Guardians followed, grabbing civilians, flying them to safety, clearing the area of everyone except the enhanced humans and their ancient master. Omni-Man and Apocalypse stood 50 feet apart, surrounded by an army of enhanced humans who looked ready to die for their new god. Last chance, Omni-Man said. Release them. Leave Earth. Find another world to test. No, Apocalypse said simply. This world has potential. Your son has potential. Even you have potential. If you'd stop serving an empire and start serving evolution, I will not leave. Then we do this the hard way. Omni-Man moved, and Chicago learned what it meant when a Viltrumite stopped holding back. Omni-Man hit Apocalypse at Mach 4, driving him through his own pyramid and into the street below, with enough force to trigger seismographs across the Midwest. The enhanced humans scattered, survival instincts temporarily overriding their loyalty as tons of concrete and steel rained down. Apocalypse absorbed the impact, showing his molecular structure reinforcing nanoseconds before collision. But even he couldn't completely negate that much kinetic energy. He cratered the asphalt 6 feet deep. Omni-Man didn't give him time to recover. He'd fought gods and monsters across 500 worlds, perfected combat techniques over centuries. Learned that against truly dangerous opponents, you never ever let them think. His fists became blurs, each punch carrying enough force to demolish a building. Left hook to the ribs, right cross to the temple, knee to the solar plexus, elbow to the spine. Viltrumite martial arts refined over millennia, applied with lethal precision. Apocalypse's armor cracked, his ancient flesh split. Blood, thick and dark as oil, sprayed across the ruins. For 5 seconds, 10, 15, Omni-Man dominated completely. And this was what a Viltrumite warrior looked like when he stopped pretending to be human. This was the strength that had conquered 500 worlds. Then Apocalypse started adapting. His molecular manipulation went into overdrive, rewriting his cellular structure in real time to match the threat. His bones became denser, harder than diamond. His muscles restructured for faster response time. His nervous system accelerated to process information at near Viltrumite speeds. Each punch Omni-Man landed provided data, And Apocalypse's 5,000-year-old mind analyzed that data faster than any computer. The 16th punch Apocalypse caught. His hand closed around Omni-Man's fist like a vice. "Better," Apocalypse said, blood streaming down his face. "But you're still holding back. You're afraid if you hit me with everything, ever, you'll kill the humans nearby. Your weakness is compassion you pretend not to have." He head-butted Omni-Man hard enough to crack the Viltrumite's nose, then drove a palm strike into his chest that sent him rocketing backward through 3 buildings. The enhanced humans, recovering from their scatter, began coordinating. They couldn't hurt Omni-Man, not really, but they could slow him. Dozens of them swarmed the Viltrumite as he rose from the rubble, hanging on his arms, his legs, his neck. Each one only had a fraction of his strength, but combined they had mass, weight, leverage. Omni-Man spun, throwing bodies like rag dolls, but he was careful not to kill them. That was the trap. Apocalypse had turned civilians into weapons, knowing that Earth's heroes would hesitate to use lethal force. Apocalypse didn't hesitate. He surged forward while Omni-Man was entangled, growing additional arms, each one ending in crystalline blades formed from his own restructured tissue. He moved like a nightmare, 8 limbs attacking simultaneously from impossible angles. One blade scraped across Omni-Man's ribs, actually drawing blood through Viltrumite's skin. Another carved a line across his shoulder. A third aimed for his throat. Omni-Man caught that one, snapped it off, and drove the broken blade into Apocalypse's eye. The ancient mutant screamed, not in pain, but in fury, and unleashed an energy blast from his celestial technology that hit Omni-Man point blank. The beam of concentrated cosmic radiation would have atomized a normal being. Against Viltrumite physiology, it merely scorched skin and boiled blood in his veins. Omni-Man flew backward, our smoke rising from his costume, and crashed into Lake Michigan hard enough to create a temporary crater in the water. High above, Mark watched the battle with his enhanced vision, torn between interfering and trusting his father's plan. The Guardians had evacuated 20,000 civilians, but there were still enhanced humans in the combat zone. Still people who would die if this fight escalated any further. "We have to help him," Mark said. "Help which one?" Robot asked, and the question hung there like an accusation. War Woman put a hand on Mark's shoulder. "Your father's holding his own, and he told us to evacuate. So that's what we do. Trust the plan." But watching his father fight a 5,000-year-old monster in the ruins of Chicago while enhanced humans tried to dogpile him didn't feel like a plan. It felt like chaos waiting to explode. Omni-Man erupted from Lake Michigan, water streaming from his damaged costume, and assessed the situation with tactical precision. Apocalypse had healed his eye completely. The enhanced humans were regrouping for another coordinated assault, and the ancient mutant was smiling that insufferable smile that suggested everything was going according to some design Omni-Man couldn't see. Time to change the paradigm. Omni-Man didn't fly toward Apocalypse. Instead, he shot straight up, accelerating to orbital velocity in seconds, breaking through the atmosphere and into the cold vacuum of space. For a moment, he hung there among the satellites and space debris, looking down at Earth. At this planet he'd been sent to conquer, but had instead, what? Fallen in love with? Certainly not. Us Viltrumites didn't love planets. They conquered them. But he'd built a life here, raised a son here, saved this world dozens of times, and now he was fighting to protect it, not for the Empire, but because Apocalypse's vision of evolution through culling offended him in ways he couldn't quite articulate. Maybe that made him a traitor to Viltrum, or maybe it made him something else entirely. He dove back toward Earth, building speed, becoming a meteor wrapped in atmospheric fire. He aimed for Apocalypse's exact position, calculating trajectory to minimize civilian casualties while maximizing impact force. At terminal velocity, a Viltrumite became a weapon capable of shattering tectonic plates. Apocalypse saw him coming and braced, molecular density increasing to maximum, arms spreading wide in challenge or welcome. The enhanced humans scattered for real this time, survival instinct overriding loyalty. Even fanaticism had limits when faced with extinction-level impact. Omni-Man hit like the fist of an angry god. The shockwave flattened buildings for 3 blocks, Car alarms screamed across the city. Windows shattered in a rippling wave that spread for miles. The crater they'd been fighting in became a chasm, and the chasm became a canyon, and the canyon became a geological feature that would show up on maps for centuries. At the bottom, two beings who existed beyond normal scales of power grappled in the dark. Omni-Man had Apocalypse pinned, his hands around the mutant's throat, squeezing with enough pressure to crush steel. You wanted to see me fight without holding back? Here it is. This is what a Viltrumite does when you threaten his world. Apocalypse's face was turning blue, his regeneration struggling to keep pace with the damage, but his eyes burned with something that wasn't fear. It was satisfaction. Yes, he choked out. This, this is what you truly are. Not a hero, not a servant, a warrior, a conqueror, someone who kills when killing is necessary. Shut up. You're proving my point, Apocalypse continued, his voice a rasp. Power must be applied. Strength must be demonstrated. The strong survive by making the weak perish. You understand this. You've always understood it. You just pretended otherwise to maintain your cover. Omni-Man's grip tightened. Apocalypse's vertebrae began to crack. His molecular manipulation was failing, unable to counter Viltrumite's strength applied with full intent to kill. "Oh, Dad, stop!" Mark's voice cut through the rage. Omni-Man looked up to see his son hovering at the crater's edge, silhouetted against the sky. The Guardians were behind him, weapons ready but uncertain. And beyond them, news helicopters were filming everything. The world was watching. "Mark, stay back," Omni-Man commanded. "You're killing him," Mark said, and his voice carried a plea that made Omni-Man's chest tighten in ways he didn't understand. "You're proving him right. He said we're all just killers pretending to be heroes, and you're showing him he's correct." "He murdered hundreds of people this afternoon alone," Omni-Man said. "He'll murder thousands more if I don't stop him. This is what stopping him looks like. There has to be another way." "There isn't." Omni-Man looked back down at Apocalypse, at the ancient monster who'd manipulated this entire situation to force exactly this outcome. "Is there?" Apocalypse smiled through the strangulation, blood on his teeth. "The boy asked the question you've been avoiding for 20 years. Are you a conqueror or a protector? Can you even be both?" Viltrumite ideology says yes. Conquer to protect, dominate to bring order. But you've lived among humans long enough to know their answer. They say heroes don't kill. Heroes find another way. So which are you, Nolan Grayson? The question hung in the air like a noose. Omni-Man's hands didn't loosen, but they didn't tighten either. He was frozen at the precipice of decision. Kill the monster and prove him right, or spare him and risk more deaths. That's when Cecil's voice crackled through the emergency broadcast system, echoing across the crater. "Omni-Man, I've got eyes on you. I've got warheads that can glass that entire crater and the city around it. You kill him, and I'm left with only one world-ending threat instead of two. You let him live, and I've got two existential problems and no good solutions. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to make a choice right now about who you are, and I'm going to make a choice about whether I trust you. We clear?" Omni-Man closed his eyes. Apocalypse was right about one thing. Everyone serves something. The question was what you chose to serve. Empire, evolution, ideology, or... He released Apocalypse's throat and stood. The ancient mutant gasped, his regeneration immediately flooding the damaged tissue with reconstructive energy. He rose slowly, rubbing his neck, studying Omni-Man with new fascination. "Interesting choice," Apocalypse said hoarsely. "It's not mercy," Omni-Man said, "and it's not weakness. You wanted to test this world? Fine, but you're going to do it my way. No more mass cullings, no more forced evolution. You want to find the strong? Prove they earn it through genuine choice, not genetic manipulation. And if I refuse, then we fight until one of us doesn't get back up. And I promise you, I have a lot more experience with that outcome than you do." Omni-Man's eyes glowed with Viltrumite fury, controlled but present. "I've killed things older and stronger than you on worlds you've never heard of. The only reason you're still breathing is because my son asked me to find another way. Don't mistake his compassion for my weakness." Apocalypse considered this, his ancient mind calculating odds and outcomes. Then slowly, so he nodded. Very well, I accept your terms. For now. But understand, Grayson, this world will be tested. If not by me, then by your own empire when they arrive. If not by Viltrum, then by the 1,000 other threats that exist in this universe. Strength will be required. Evolution will be demanded. The only question is whether it happens through intention or through catastrophe. Then we prepare them, Omni-Man said. We make them stronger without slaughtering the weak. We find champions worth defending. We prove that civilization can survive without becoming what you represent. An optimistic philosophy from a conqueror. I'm learning. Mark landed beside his father, and for a moment they stood together. Father and son, Viltrumite and half-human, conqueror and hero. The Guardians descended cautiously. Cecil's voice remained silent on the broadcast, weapons hot but not firing. And Apocalypse, for the first time since arriving in this universe, looked genuinely uncertain about his path forward. Your enhanced humans, Omni-Man said, they revert to baseline, or they serve this world's defense voluntarily. No indoctrination, no forced loyalty, choice. Apocalypse's expression darkened. You ask me to undo my work? I'm telling you the cost of staying on this planet without me killing you. Take it or leave it. The enhanced humans had gathered at the crater's edge, watching their creator and destroyer negotiate their fate. Some looked relieved. Others looked betrayed. All of them looked lost without the certainty Apocalypse had provided. Apocalypse raised his hand, and blue light flickered across the crowd. One by one, the enhanced humans collapsed, then rose again with normal eyes, normal skin, normal strength. Returned to what they'd been before evolution had been forced upon them. Some wept with relief, others wept with loss. There, Apocalypse said coldly, your mercy granted, your weakness preserved. But mark my words, Grayson, when the true test comes, when armies descend or disasters strike, you will wish you had my enhanced warriors to defend this world, and you will remember the day you chose compassion over survival. Maybe, Omni-Man admitted, but I'll still be able to look my son in the eye. Apocalypse stared at them both, then threw back his head and laughed, a sound like grinding stone and ancient thunder. You are more interesting than I anticipated, both of you. Very well, I will abide by your terms. I will test this world through trial by fire rather than genetic purge. But I will not leave. I will not surrender my vision. And when the darkness comes, and it will come, Grayson, it always does, we will see whose philosophy actually saves lives. He rose into the air, celestial armor gleaming, and shot eastward toward the rising sun. The Guardians moved to pursue, but Omni-Man raised a hand. Let him go. He'll keep his word. For now. How do you know? War Woman asked. Because he's not lying when he says darkness is coming, Omni-Man said quietly, his eyes still tracking Apocalypse's departing form. He's not wrong about this world needing to be stronger. He's only wrong about the method. And that makes him more dangerous than any enemy we've fought. Era, because part of me agrees with him. Mark looked at his father with new understanding and new fear. Dad, we need to talk, Omni-Man said. All of us. About what's coming. About what I am. About what you're going to have to become. Because Apocalypse isn't the real threat. The Viltrumite Empire is. And they're not going to give us 20 years to prepare. They're going to come, and they're going to demand I choose between them and Earth. What will you choose? The Immortal asked. Omni-Man looked at his son, then at the ruins of Chicago, then at the sky where somewhere among the stars his people waited. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of an impossible decision already made. I don't know yet, but when I figure it out, you'll be the first to know. 3 months passed. 3 months of uneasy peace while the world held its breath and waited for the next catastrophe. Apocalypse had vanished into the shadows, though Cecil's intelligence network caught glimpses. A figure in the Himalayas examining ancient temples, satellite feeds showing impossible construction in the Sahara, reports from deep-sea facilities of something analyzing tectonic formations. He was building, planning, waiting, and he wasn't the only one. Omni-Man had moved out of the family home. Not far, just to an apartment downtown where he could see Mark's house with his enhanced vision if he wanted. The separation was Debbie's idea, delivered with the kind of quiet devastation that hurt worse than any Viltrumite punch. I need time to process that my entire marriage was a lie, she'd said, that the man I loved was an alien sleeper agent, that every moment we shared was part of your mission. Nolan had tried to explain that it wasn't all lies, that somewhere along the way pretending had become real, but the words felt hollow even to him. How could he expect her to believe his feelings were genuine when he'd spent 20 years as a living deception? Mark visited him twice a week, training sessions that doubled as attempts to rebuild trust. They flew together through storm clouds over the Pacific, practicing combat techniques that might matter when the Empire arrived. Nolan taught his son how Viltrumites fought, the efficiency of their strikes, the ruthlessness of their tactics, the way they turned physics into weaponry. And Mark, for all his anger and betrayal, learned, because he understood the fundamental truth. Whatever was coming would be worse than apocalypse. Cecil had been surprisingly pragmatic about the whole situation. "You're a weapon," he'd told Omni-Man during a tense meeting in an undisclosed location. "A weapon I can't destroy and can't fully trust. But you're also the only person on this planet who knows how to fight Viltrumites. So here's the deal. You help us prepare for when your empire shows up. You help us deal with Apocalypse if he goes genocidal again. And in exchange, I don't spend every waking moment trying to find a way to kill you. And if I refuse, then I spend every waking moment trying to kill you and probably fail, which wastes resources we need for actual planetary defense." Cecil had lit a cigar, the smoke curling around his scarred face. "We both know you're stuck, Grayson. You can't go back to Viltrum. You already threatened another Viltrumite to protect Earth. You can't fully commit to Earth. You're still fundamentally alien. So you exist in this liminal space, belonging nowhere, trusted by no one. Might as well make yourself useful while you figure out which side you're actually on." The worst part was that Cecil was right. Now Omni-Man stood in the rebuilt Pentagon Situation Room, surrounded by people who watched him like a bomb with an unknown timer. The Guardians had been reorganized. Immortal still led them, though the easy camaraderie was gone, replaced by professional distance. War Woman kept her mace within reach, even during briefings. Robot had built contingencies within contingencies, none of which would actually work, but made everyone feel slightly safer. Only Mark looked at him without pure calculation or fear, and even his son's eyes carried questions Nolan couldn't answer. Cecil pulled up a holographic display showing satellite imagery from low Earth orbit. "We've got a problem. A big one." The image resolved into something that made Omni-Man's blood run cold despite his Viltrumite physiology. A ship, not human construction, not Martian, not any of Earth's known alien technologies. It was Viltrumite design, sleek, efficient, built for one purpose. And it was parked in geosynchronous orbit directly above North America. "How long?" Omni-Man asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Appeared 3 hours ago. No communication, no hostile action, just waiting." Cecil's cigar glowed brighter. "Your people?" "Yes." Omni-Man studied the ship's configuration, reading its purpose like a book written in a language only he understood. "That's a command vessel. Crew of 3, typically, and meant for high-value retrieval or termination operations." "Retrieval or termination of what?" "Of compromised operatives." Omni-Man met Cecil's gaze. "They're here for me." Mark stepped forward. "Can we fight them?" "No," Omni-Man said flatly. "Command vessels carry the Empire's best warriors. Centuries of combat experience each. If they're here for termination protocol, it means Anissa reported that I'd gone native. And if she reported that, then these 3 are authorized to kill me, destroy Earth as an example, and return to Viltrum with confirmation of mission completion." The room went silent. Even Robot's constant mechanical humming seemed to quiet. "So what do we do?" the Immortal asked. Before Omni-Man could answer, every screen in the Situation Room switched to the same feed. A woman's face filled the displays. Not Anissa, but someone older, harder, with scars that spoke to centuries of warfare. Her Viltrumite uniform was pristine white, with golden rank insignia that Omni-Man recognized immediately. "Nolan Grayson," the woman said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I am General Craig of the Viltrum High Command. You are hereby summoned to answer charges of mission abandonment, genetic contamination, and potential treason against the Empire. You have 1 Earth hour to present yourself aboard this vessel. If you do not comply, we will consider you hostile and respond with appropriate force. The transmission cut off. The screens returned to Cecil's feeds. Appropriate force, War Woman repeated. Meaning? Meaning they destroy the planet, Omni-Man said quietly. 3 Viltrumites, working in coordination, can destabilize a planet's core. It takes time, days, maybe weeks, but it's doable. They fly through the mantle at maximum speed, creating fractures that cascade into total geological collapse. Earth shatters, everyone dies, and the Empire writes it off as an unfortunate loss of a potential colony world. That's genocide, Mark said, his voice breaking. That's policy. Omni-Man looked at his son with something that might have been regret. Compromised worlds are worse than useless. They're examples. Viltrum rules 500 worlds through fear as much as strength. Let one colony see an operative go native and survive, and suddenly every conquered world starts wondering if they can resist too. Cecil was already pulling up tactical data, running scenarios, calculating odds. Can options? I present myself and hope they kill me quickly instead of bringing me back for public execution, Omni-Man said. Or I run, and they destroy Earth anyway. Or I fight, and they definitely destroy Earth because at that point it's personal. Those are terrible options, Robot observed. They're Viltrumite options. There's a difference. Mark grabbed his father's arm. There has to be another way. Some kind of negotiation, some proof that you've been doing your job. I threatened Anissa to protect this planet. I stopped Apocalypse from culling humans to preserve the population. I moved out of my family home instead of killing my wife and son to eliminate evidence of contamination. Omni-Man gently removed Mark's hand. There's no explaining that to the Empire. Not in any way that ends with Earth intact. Then we fight, the Immortal said, reaching for his axe. You'll die in seconds, Omni-Man said. All of you. They're not like me. They're not conflicted. They haven't spent 20 years learning to care about humans. They won't hesitate. You'll charge them believing you're defending your world, and they'll swat you out of the sky like insects. And then they'll destroy Earth anyway while I watch, because that's the punishment for making them use force. The room descended into helpless silence. 8 billion lives hanging on an impossible choice. And the only person who could make that choice was an alien warrior who'd spent 20 years lying about everything. That's when the alarms went off. Again, different pattern this time. Not attack warnings, but proximity alerts. As something else had just entered orbit. Something big. Cecil pulled up the new contact, and everyone in the room forgot to breathe. A structure was materializing in space near the Viltrumite command vessel. Not a ship, a pyramid, massive and impossible, constructed from what looked like crystallized energy and ancient metal. Its surface was covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at, symbols from a dozen dead languages, and at its apex, clearly visible through the void, stood a figure in celestial armor. Apocalypse had built himself a space station, and he was broadcasting on all frequencies. General Craig of Viltrum, Apocalypse's voice echoed through the Situation Room speakers. I am En Saba Nur, oldest and strongest of my kind. I claim this world under the doctrine of evolutionary sovereignty. It belongs neither to you nor to your wayward operative. It belongs to me, to test and refine as I see fit. If you wish to dispute this claim, I invite you to attempt it. I promise you will find me a more challenging opponent than anticipated. Craig's face reappeared on screen, her expression carved from stone. This is Viltrumite territory under preparation for annexation. Remove yourself or be removed. I have removed beings far greater than you from existence, Apocalypse replied. I have stood against celestials and survived. I have broken gods and remade civilizations. You are powerful, yes. Your species has achieved remarkable physical perfection, but I have achieved something your empire cannot comprehend. 5,000 years of continuous evolution. Every battle teaches me. Every enemy makes me stronger. Come, test yourself against eternity. The transmission cut off. Both vessels hung in orbit, silent and deadly, each one capable of ending human civilization, but now focused entirely on each other. He's protecting Earth, Mark said, disbelief in his voice. Apocalypse is actually protecting us. He's claiming Earth, Omni-Man corrected. There's a difference. He sees this world as his laboratory, his testing ground. He won't let Viltrum destroy it because he's not finished experimenting on it. Does the distinction matter right now? Cecil asked. No, Omni-Man admitted. Right now, it's probably the only thing keeping this planet intact. On screen, the Viltrumite command vessel began powering weapon systems. Apocalypse's pyramid glowed with celestial energy that made radiation detectors scream across the planet. Hunaf's two existential threats preparing for combat in orbit above an Earth that could do nothing but watch. And Omni-Man realized with creeping horror that he'd made things worse. By threatening Anissa, by fighting Apocalypse, by trying to protect this planet, he'd turned Earth into a battlefield between forces that existed far beyond human capacity to influence. The thing he'd been sent here to conquer was now going to be destroyed as collateral damage in a war between his empire and an ancient mutant god. Unless. I have an idea, Omni-Man said slowly. It's insane. It'll probably get me killed. And it requires trusting Apocalypse to follow through on something that goes against every instinct he has. What is it? Cecil demanded. Omni-Man looked at Mark, at the Guardians, at the humans who'd trusted him and been betrayed, and were somehow still looking to him for solutions. We changed the game. We stopped letting them define the terms. Viltrumites believe in strength through conquest. Apocalypse believes in strength through evolution. Both of them see Earth as something to be taken. So we prove them both wrong. How? Mark asked. We show them Earth doesn't need to be saved by gods or conquered by empires, Omni-Man said, a plan forming that was either brilliant or suicidal. We show them what humans can actually do when they stop being protected and start protecting themselves. That's suicide, Warwoman said. We can't fight Viltrumites. No, Omni-Man agreed, but you can fight for Earth in a way that changes what this conflict means. Han and I can buy you the time you need to prove it. He rose into the air, preparing to fly toward orbit in a confrontation that would define everything that came after. Mark grabbed his cape. Dad, don't! Nolan looked at his son and saw everything he'd spent 20 years trying to reconcile. Human courage, Viltrumite power, the impossible hybrid that represented both species' potential. I've been a Viltrumite pretending to be a hero for 2 decades. Maybe it's time I actually figure out which one I really am. He broke through the ceiling before Mark could respond and accelerated toward space, toward the command vessel carrying warriors who'd been sent to judge him, toward his moment of truth. Behind him on Earth, Mark turned to the Guardians with determination burning in his eyes. Dad's buying us time. We can't waste it. Cecil, honor, activate every enhanced individual on your roster. Immortal, contact every hero team globally. Robot, I need you to build something that can hurt Viltrumites, and someone find out how we contact Apocalypse. Because if we're going to save Earth, we need to convince an ancient genocidal mutant that humanity is worth preserving. That's impossible, Green Ghost said. Good, Mark replied, because impossible is the only thing that's going to work. Omni-Man broke through Earth's atmosphere and into the cold silence of space, where 2 vessels of impossible power waited like predators circling prey. The Viltrumite command ship rotated slowly, its weapon systems tracking his approach with mechanical precision. Apocalypse's pyramid pulsed with energy that made the vacuum itself seem to shudder, and between them, Nolan Grayson hung suspended in the void, belonging to neither, trusted by none. General Craig's voice came through on Viltrumite communication frequencies, transmitted directly to the implant all warriors received during training. Nolan Grayson, you were summoned to the vessel, not invited to stage a dramatic entrance. I'm here to negotiate, Omni-Man replied, his voice carrying across the void through Viltrumite vocal techniques that humans couldn't replicate. Not surrender. There's a difference. There is no negotiation with treason. Craig's vessel released 2 figures from its airlock. Viltrumites in combat armor, centuries of experience evident in the way they moved. One was male, massive even by Viltrumite standards, with scars that spoke to thousands of battles. The other was female, younger but radiating the kind of controlled lethality that came from being very, very good at killing. You threatened a fellow warrior. You contaminated yourself with native genetics. You failed your mission. The only question is whether you die quickly or painfully. I completed my mission, Omni-Man said, and even he was surprised by how easily the lie came. I've spent 20 years embedding myself in Earth's power structure, identifying weaknesses, cultivating assets. The planet is ready for annexation, more ready than any conquest target in the Empire's history. The two warriors flanking Craig's ship paused. That was unexpected. Then why? Craig's voice dripped with suspicion. Did Anissa report mission compromise? Because Anissa is young and didn't understand long-term strategy. She saw me with a hybrid son and assumed contamination instead of recognizing what I'd actually created. Omni-Man gestured toward Earth below them, blue and beautiful and utterly vulnerable. My son is half Viltrumite, yes, but he's also half human, which means he's trusted by this world's defenders in ways no pure Viltrumite could be. He has access to their most secure facilities, their strategic planning, their genetic enhancement programs. Through him, I control Earth's entire superhuman defense network. It was a masterful lie, the kind of strategic deception that Viltrumite commanders taught as advanced tactics. The kind of thing Nolan would have been proud of 20 years ago. The large male warrior spoke, his voice like grinding boulders. Even if that were true, you threatened Anissa. You chose native interests over Viltrumite authority. I threatened Anissa because she was about to compromise 20 years of deep cover work by revealing what I'd built. She would have forced Earth's defenders to purge all Viltrumite influence, destroyed my asset network, and set the mission back decades. Omni-Man met their gazes without flinching. I made a tactical choice to preserve operational security. That's not treason. That's command judgment. Interesting defense. Apocalypse's voice boomed across the void, his pyramid drifting closer with impossible grace. Tell me, Nolan Grayson, do you believe this lie? Or are you simply hoping they do? Stay out of this, creature, Craig commanded. This is Viltrumite business. This world is my business, Apocalypse replied. I have claimed it for my experiments in guided evolution. I will not permit you to destroy what I have cultivated. You will permit nothing, the female warrior said, her voice sharp as broken glass. You are an anomaly. Powerful, yes, but singular. We are Viltrumite. We are Legion. Stand aside or be eliminated. Apocalypse laughed, and the sound carried across the vacuum through some application of celestial technology that shouldn't work but did. Legion, you number in the thousands at most. Your great plague saw to that. I, however, am 5,000 years of accumulated knowledge, refined combat technique, and celestial enhancement. I am evolution personified. Come, show me what your vaunted empire can do against a being who has fought gods. The female warrior moved first, not at Apocalypse, but at Omni-Man. She covered the distance in microseconds, her fist aimed at his skull with enough force to pulverize Diamond. Omni-Man barely dodged, the punch grazing his temple and leaving a line of scorched skin. She was fast. Faster than him, probably. Younger, less conflicted, full of righteous purpose. Lucan questions your loyalty, she said, spinning for a follow-up strike. I'm here to test it. Fight back, Grayson. Prove you're still Viltrumite. Omni-Man blocked instead of countering, his mind racing. If he fought with full force, he'd reveal how much he'd been holding back on Earth, which would support his lie. But it would also mean genuinely trying to kill a fellow Viltrumite, which would cross a line he wasn't sure he could uncross. If he held back, they'd know he'd gone native, and Earth would burn. The large warrior, Lucan, engaged Apocalypse. Two beings who could shatter planets collided in the void with enough force to warp space-time measurably. Lucan's punches moved faster than thought, each one capable of destroying cities. Apocalypse met them with appendages grown from his own restructured mass, blades and hammers and spears that formed and reformed as needed. They tumbled through the debris field of old satellites, shattering metal and circuitry, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. And on Earth, Mark watched through long-range telescopes, his fists clenched so hard they drew blood. The Guardians had assembled every enhanced human on Cecil's roster. Dozens of individuals with powers ranging from moderate strength to genuine threat-level abilities. Most of them had never worked together. Some actively disliked each other. But they stood now in the Global Defense Agency's main hangar, watching the space battle on massive screens, understanding that their world hung in the balance. "We can't reach them," Green Ghost said, her ethereal form flickering with agitation. "They're in orbit. We have no way to influence what happens up there." "Then we influence what happens down here," Mark replied. He stood at the front of the assembled heroes, looking younger than his 17 years, but carrying himself with authority that came from being Omni-Man's son. "Apocalypse said this world needs to be tested, that humanity needs to prove we're worth preserving. So that's what we do." "How?" a hero called Bulletproof asked. "By standing around and looking determined? By showing we don't need gods or empires to protect us," Mark said. "Robot, you've been analyzing Viltrumite physiology for months. What did you find?" Robot's mechanical form projected data across holographic screens. Viltrumites are incredibly durable, but they're not invulnerable. Sufficient force applied to their equilibrium centers can disrupt their spatial orientation. Extreme temperatures, both hot and cold, cause measurable discomfort. And most importantly, their inner ear is vulnerable. A sonic attack at precisely calibrated frequencies can incapacitate them temporarily. "Temporarily isn't good enough," Warwoman said. "It is if we're trying to prove a point rather than win a war," the immortal countered. He looked older than his 3,000 years, the weight of revealed betrayals and impossible odds making him seem almost fragile. But his eyes still burned with the fire that had kept him fighting since ancient Egypt. Mark's right. This isn't about killing Viltrumites. It's about demonstrating that Earth has defenders who won't bow to conquest, that humanity produces champions worth respecting. "Apocalypse respects strength," Mark said. "So we show him strength. And we do it in a way that makes him reassess whether culling humans is actually the path to evolution or whether preserving our diversity is." Cecil entered the hangar, his ever-present cigar trailing smoke. "I've got something that might help. We've been developing a sonic weapon based on Viltrumite physiology data. It's untested, probably incomplete, and will definitely piss off anyone we use it on. But if you're looking for a way to prove humanity can defend itself," he gestured, and a team of technicians wheeled in something that looked like a cannon crossed with a musical instrument. The barrel was crystalline, pulsing with energy that made teeth ache just looking at it. "The resonance disruptor," Robot said, examining the weapon with evident approval. "I provided the theoretical framework, but you actually built it?" "Built 12 of them," Cecil corrected, "distributed across major cities globally. If Viltrumites decide to invade, we hit them with coordinated sonic attacks that disrupt their equilibrium. Won't kill them, probably won't even seriously hurt them, but it'll slow them down enough for our heavy hitters to engage." "And you didn't tell us about this before because," Warwoman asked. "Because I don't trust anyone completely anymore," Cecil said flatly. "Not after Omni-Man. Not after learning Earth's greatest hero was an alien sleeper agent. From now on, I've got contingencies within contingencies, and nobody knows everything. Welcome to the new normal." Mark wanted to argue, wanted to defend his father, wanted to explain that Nolan had changed, but he couldn't, because he didn't know if it was true. His father was up in space right now, either fighting for Earth or completing his original mission, either saving humanity or condemning it, and Mark had no way to know which until it was too late. "So what's the play?" Bulletproof asked. Mark looked at the assembled heroes, at the sonic weapons, at the screen showing his father locked in combat with a Viltrumite warrior, while Apocalypse fought another. He thought about his mother at home, probably watching the same feeds, in wondering if her husband would save the world or destroy it. He thought about every person on Earth who had no idea they were minutes away from extinction or salvation. And he made a choice that would have made both his father and Apocalypse proud, for very different reasons. "We go up there," Mark said. "All of us. We show the Empire and Apocalypse that Earth doesn't wait to be saved. We fight for ourselves." "We'll die," Green Ghost said quietly. "Probably," Mark agreed. "But we'll die as defenders of our world, as champions who refuse to bow. And maybe that's enough to change the equation. to make them see us as something other than primitives waiting to be conquered or cattle waiting to be culled. That's insane, someone said. Ione, it's also the only plan that doesn't involve sitting here, waiting for gods to decide our fate, the immortal said. He raised his axe, the ancient weapon catching the light. I've lived 3,000 years. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've watched heroes become legends and legends become myths. And the one constant is this: the strong respect those who fight, even when fighting is futile, especially when fighting is futile. So yeah, let's go die gloriously and give Earth a fighting chance. One by one, the heroes nodded. They knew the odds. They understood the math. They were choosing it anyway. Cecil watched them prepare to depart and permitted himself the smallest smile. For what it's worth, you're all insane. Hey, but you're the kind of insane that makes me think maybe we've got a shot after all. How do we even get to orbit? Bulletproof asked. Robot's shell opened, revealing advanced propulsion systems he'd been hiding. I've been preparing for this contingency since Apocalypse arrived. I have transport capable of reaching low Earth orbit. It'll be cramped, dangerous, and we'll be flying into a combat zone featuring beings who can destroy planets. But you want to make a statement? We make a statement, Mark finished. Let's show them what humanity actually looks like when we stop being protected and start protecting ourselves. The resonance disruptors were loaded. The heroes boarded Robot's transport. And from Earth went a vessel carrying hope and desperation and the desperate courage of beings who knew they were outmatched but refused to surrender, launched toward the space battle that would determine their world's fate. Apocalypse saw them coming and smiled. Craig saw them coming and recalculated. And Omni-Man, locked in combat with a Viltrumite warrior determined to test his loyalty, saw his son leading Earth's defenders into the void and felt something in his chest break and reforge simultaneously. This is what you've created? The female warrior asked, following his gaze. A suicide mission? Primitives flying toward their deaths? No, Omni-Man said, and for the first time in 20 years, he knew exactly what he was. This is what I've protected. This is what they are without gods or empires telling them how to live. Ellie, this is humanity. He stopped blocking, started fighting, and showed her exactly how much a conflicted Viltrumite could actually do. The female Viltrumite warrior, her name was Thula, Omni-Man remembered from briefings centuries ago, barely had time to register the shift before his fist caught her solar plexus with enough force to crack ribs even through Viltrumite density. She gasped, shocked, and Omni-Man pressed the advantage. He'd been holding back for 20 years against everyone except Apocalypse. Now, fighting a true equal, he remembered what it meant to be Viltrumite. He was brutal, efficient, ruthless, and he was fighting to protect Earth, not conquer it. Thula recovered fast. Centuries of combat experience made her adaptable, and drove a knee toward his face. Omni-Man twisted, caught her leg, and used her momentum to slam her into the hull of Craig's command vessel hard enough to dent the reinforced metal. She rebounded immediately, blood at her lip, eyes blazing with combat fury. You've improved, she acknowledged. Earth has tested you. Earth has changed me, Omni-Man corrected. They collided again, tumbling through space in a deadly dance that left contrails of disturbed cosmic radiation. Punch, counter, block, strike. Two Viltrumite warriors fighting with the kind of intensity that could reshape battlefields. But Omni-Man was fighting for something Thula couldn't understand. Not conquest, not duty, not empire. He was fighting for the right to choose. Nearby, Lucan and Apocalypse had escalated to cosmic-level violence. Lucan had grown to his full combat size. Nearly 10 feet of concentrated Viltrumite muscle and rage, air scars glowing with inner fire. He moved like a force of nature, each punch carrying enough kinetic energy to shatter moons. Apocalypse matched him through sheer versatility, his form constantly shifting, growing extra limbs to grapple, hardening to diamond density to absorb impacts, firing celestial energy beams that scorched Viltrumite skin. You are strong, Apocalypse said, blocking a strike that would have killed gods. Stronger than most beings I've encountered, but strength without evolution is merely stagnation. You have peaked, Viltrumite. I continue to grow. Viltrumites don't need evolution, Lucan growled, driving a combination of strikes that forced Apocalypse backward through a defunct satellite. We are already perfect. Then why did a plague kill 99% of your species? Apocalypse asked. Why? And the question hung in the void like an accusation. Perfect beings don't succumb to disease. Perfect species don't nearly go extinct. You are powerful, yes, but fragile in ways you refuse to acknowledge. Lucan roared and tackled Apocalypse at relativistic speeds, driving them both toward Earth's atmosphere. They burned through the thermosphere, trailing fire, two titans locked in hatred and mutual need to prove superiority. The friction should have incinerated normal beings. Instead, it merely made them glow as they plummeted toward the Pacific Ocean. They hit the water at Mach 7, creating a tsunami that would have devastated coastlines if not for dozens of hydrokinetic heroes Cecil had positioned as contingency. The wave dissipated into controlled dispersion, turned aside by powers both technological and metahuman. Won another small victory for Earth, not winning the war, but proving they could adapt. Lucan and Apocalypse erupted from the ocean, still fighting, spiraling back toward space, neither willing to concede ground. And that's when robots' transport breached the atmosphere, carrying Earth's desperate gambit into the void. Mark saw the combat with his enhanced vision, his father locked with a Viltrumite warrior, Apocalypse and another Viltrumite destroying each other with apocalyptic force, and the massive command vessel powering weapons that could glass continents. The other heroes crowded around the viewports, seeing the scale of power they were challenging, understanding how outmatched they truly were. We can't fight them, Green Ghost whispered. Look at them. We're insects. Then we be the insects that sting, the immortal said. Now he stood at the transport's front, axe in hand, looking every inch the ancient warrior who'd survived 3,000 years through sheer stubborn refusal to die. Robot, get us close to that command vessel. War woman, bulletproof, invincible. We're the heavy hitters. We engage whatever comes out of that ship. Everyone else, defensive positions. Protect the resonance disruptors at all costs. What about Apocalypse? Someone asked. Apocalypse is complicated, Mark said, watching the ancient mutant grapple with Lucan. He's claiming Earth, which means he won't let Viltrum destroy it. Right now, he's technically on our side. The enemy of my enemy is my enemy, who happens to be fighting my other enemy, Robot observed. Not ideal, but tactically useful. The transport closed on Craig's vessel, and weapons locks activated. The command ship's targeting systems focusing on the primitive Earthcraft that dared approach Viltrumite military hardware. Mark saw the energy buildup, knew they had seconds before atomization. Then his father was there, inserting himself between the transport and the command ship's weapons, his body blocking the firing solution. Craig! Omni-Man's voice carried across communication channels. Call off the attack. These are my assets, my cultivated defenders. They're here because I ordered them to demonstrate Earth's combat readiness. You ordered primitives to attack a Viltrumite command vessel? Craig's voice dripped skepticism. That's either the boldest tactical move I've seen or confirmation you've completely lost your mind. It's proof, Omni-Man said. Watch them. They know they're outmatched. They know they'll probably die. They're attacking anyway because I've spent 20 years conditioning them to believe they can resist superior force. When the Empire arrives for annexation, these defenders will fight with suicidal courage because they've been trained to believe resistance is possible, which means the invasion will be costly, bloody, and prolonged. Or, he paused for effect, a Viltrumite tactical pause perfected over centuries. Or the Empire accepts Earth's integration peacefully, utilizing the existing power structure I've carefully cultivated, preserving the enhanced human population as military assets. We get a functional colony world with superpowered soldiers loyal to the Empire through my hybrid son's influence. We avoid the cost of violent conquest. What Viltrum gains another world without losing a single warrior. It was a masterful lie built on a foundation of partial truths, the kind of strategic deception that Viltrumite commanders would appreciate even as they questioned it. Craig was silent for a long moment. Then, land your assets on the hull. Non-lethal demonstration only. If I'm satisfied with their capabilities, we'll consider your mission successful. If I'm not, understood, Omni-Man said. He turned to the transport, to his son visible through the viewport, and transmitted on a frequency only Mark could hear through his enhanced Viltrumite hearing. I'm buying you one chance to prove Earth is worth preserving. Make it count. Show them humans are more than cattle, but don't kill anyone. That breaks the illusion. Mark nodded, understanding flooding through him. When his father was threading an impossible needle, convincing the Empire that Earth was too valuable to destroy, while convincing Earth's defenders they were actually fighting. It was deception layered on manipulation, layered on desperate hope. It was also the only play they had. The transport latched onto Craig's command vessel. The airlock opened, and Earth's defenders poured into the void in their mismatched costumes and improvised armor, facing down an empire that had conquered 500 worlds. Thula watched them approach with something like curiosity. These are Earth's champions? Some of them, Omni-Man said. The ones willing to die first. The Immortal led the charge, his 3,000-year-old battle cry echoing through helmet communicators. War Woman flew beside him, mace crackling with divine energy. Bulletproof's invulnerable form deflected microdebris. And Mark, half human and half Viltrumite, positioned himself at the front, showing both species that hybrids could be bridges instead of contaminations. They didn't attack the command vessel. That would be genuinely suicidal. Instead, they formed a defensive perimeter around it, a living wall of flesh and power, proclaiming Earth's right to defend itself. It was theater, performance, a demonstration that humans could organize, coordinate, and face impossible odds without breaking. Craig watched from her bridge, analyzing their formations, their power levels, their tactical deployment. Interesting. They're weaker than Viltrumite warriors, but stronger than most conquered species at similar technological levels. And they're numerous. How many enhanced individuals does Earth possess? Hundreds in active service, Omni-Man replied, inflating the numbers only slightly. Thousands with latent abilities, millions with genetic potential for enhancement. It's a remarkably mutation-prone species. If properly managed, Earth could produce super soldiers for generations. And you've integrated yourself into their command structure how exactly? Through my son. Omni-Man gestured toward Mark, who was coordinating defensive positions with the Guardians. Half Viltrumite, half human, fully trusted by both sides. When the Empire arrives, he'll advocate for peaceful integration. The defenders will follow his lead because he's one of them, and the Empire will trust his loyalty because he's Viltrumite. Assuming he is loyal, Craig said, what if your contamination runs both ways? What if he chooses Earth over Viltrum? It was the question Omni-Man had been dreading, the one he couldn't answer because he didn't know himself. Before he could respond, Apocalypse and Lucan crashed into the command vessel's hull with enough force to rock the entire structure. Heroes scattered. Alarms blared. And the ancient mutant, bleeding from a dozen wounds but grinning like a madman, spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Enough theater, Nolan Grayson. I tire of watching you play both sides. Apocalypse rose from the crater he'd created, celestial armor reassembling around his form. You want to convince the Empire that Earth is worth preserving? Let me offer a simpler solution. He raised his hand, and his pyramid vessel moved into position above them, weapons charging with energy that made Geiger counters scream across the planet. I challenge the Viltrumite Empire for ownership of this world, Apocalypse declared. Not through conquest. You've already proven that leads to endless cycles of rebellion and resistance. But through trial by combat, single combat, your strongest warrior against me. If I win, Earth becomes my laboratory, free from Viltrumite interference. If you win, I leave this universe entirely, and Earth is yours to annex. A clean resolution, an evolutionary test. The strong survive, the weak perish. Isn't that your ideology? Craig's laugh echoed across communication channels. You think you can defeat a Viltrumite champion in single combat? We've conquered 500 worlds, killed trillions. Our warriors trained for centuries. And I have existed for 5 millennia, Apocalypse countered. I have fought celestials, broken gods, survived the death of civilizations. Your empire is powerful but young. I am ancient and patient, and I know something you don't. What's that? Evolution always wins, always. Apocalypse's eyes glowed with celestial fire. So send your champion, send your strongest warrior, send whoever you believe represents Viltrumite superiority. And I will show you what 5,000 years of continuous adaptation looks like when applied to combat. The challenge hung in space like a thrown gauntlet. Craig considered it with the tactical mind that had made her a general. A duel would preserve resources, prevent the costly planetary destruction protocol, and if Apocalypse won, Age Earth would still be denied to potential rivals since he'd proven unable to share it peacefully. If Viltrum won, they gained Earth without the mess of violent conquest. Accepted, Craig said. The challenge will occur on neutral ground. Earth's surface, location of your choosing. Our champion against you. Winner claims the world. Loser leaves or dies. Agreed, Apocalypse said. Wait, Mark shouted. We don't get a say in this. This is our planet. No, Craig and Apocalypse said simultaneously, the first time they'd agreed on anything. This is a contest between apex predators, Apocalypse continued. Your species is the prize, not a participant. Be grateful. The winner will at least keep you alive, if only to justify possessing you. Omni-Man closed his eyes, knowing the trap had just closed. Earth's fate would be decided by single combat between beings who existed beyond human capacity to influence. His careful deception, his 20 years of planning, his desperate attempt to protect both his world and his family, all of it rendered irrelevant by two superior forces deciding Earth's destiny through trial by combat. And the worst part was that he didn't know which outcome he wanted. If Apocalypse won, Earth became a laboratory for guided evolution. Constant testing, selective culling, transformation into something stronger but fundamentally other. If Viltrum won, Earth became another colony, another conquered world in an empire that enslaved freedom for the illusion of order. Either way, humanity lost the right to determine its own future. Who's your champion? Apocalypse asked Craig. The general's smile was cold and precise. I am. I'll kill you myself and enjoy every second of it. They chose the Nevada desert for the arena, flat, empty, far from civilian populations, but close enough that satellites could broadcast the fight globally. Cecil had wanted a controlled environment, maybe an underground facility, but Apocalypse had refused. Let humanity watch, he'd said. Let them see what real power looks like. Let them understand the forces that will shape their future. Now, as dawn broke over the American Southwest, two beings who could reshape planets faced each other across a quarter-mile of scorched earth. General Craig stood in full Viltrumite combat regalia, white uniform pristine, scars from 1,000 battles visible on her exposed skin. 800 years of warfare had honed her into something beyond a mere soldier. She was violence personified, when strategy made flesh, the Empire's answer to any threat that required killing. Apocalypse had transformed himself for this battle. Gone was the restrained 8-foot form he'd used for conversation. He'd grown to 15 feet of living metal and ancient flesh, celestial armor covering him like a second skin that pulsed with captured starlight. His forearms each held weapons grown from his own restructured mass, a sword, a hammer, a spear, and a blade that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. 5,000 years of accumulated combat knowledge radiated from him like heat. Between them, a half-mile of empty desert waited to become a graveyard. On a ridge 3 miles away, behind energy shields that probably wouldn't matter if the combat escalated, Earth's defenders watched. Mark stood beside his father, the two of them silent, both understanding that what happened next would determine everything. The Guardians, the Global Defense Agency, representatives from every nation, all of them rendered spectators to a contest between gods. She's going to kill him, Omni-Man said quietly. Craig is one of the Empire's best. Centuries of experience. She's fought things that would make Apocalypse look conventional. He's 5,000 years old, Mark countered. He's survived Celestials. He's adapted to every attack we've thrown at him. Age doesn't equal skill, and adaptation takes time. Craig won't give him time. Omni-Man's jaw clenched. If she wins, Earth becomes a Viltrumite colony. I'll be expected to help consolidate the conquest, to choose the Empire over you, over your mother, over this world. Will you? The question hung between them like a blade. Omni-Man didn't answer immediately. He watched Craig stretching, preparing, moving through combat forms that were older than human civilization. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. I don't know. Part of me is still Viltrumite. Still believes the Empire represents order in a chaotic universe. Still thinks conquest serves a purpose. He paused. But another part of me has lived here for 20 years, raised you, loved your mother, saved this planet dozens of times, and I don't know which part is stronger anymore. Mark wanted to say something profound, something that would convince his father to choose Earth, but the words wouldn't come, because he understood the impossible position Nolan was in, torn between species, between duty and love, sorry, between everything he'd been raised to believe and everything he'd discovered while pretending to be human. Cecil's voice crackled over communications. They're starting. Craig moved first. Not a charge, but a tactical approach, circling at supersonic speeds, creating sonic booms that shattered what little vegetation existed in the desert. She was testing Apocalypse's tracking speed, his reaction time, looking for weaknesses in his guard. Standard Viltrumite opening gambit against unknown threats. Apocalypse didn't track her visually. Instead, he used molecular sensors, feeling the displacement of air molecules, reading the kinetic signatures of her passage. When she dove in for a strike from his blind spot, he was already turning, his hammer arms swinging in an arc calculated to intersect her trajectory. Craig twisted mid-flight, he demonstrating the kind of spatial awareness that came from centuries of three-dimensional combat. The hammer missed by inches. She countered with a punch to his ribs that cracked celestial armor and drove him backward 50 feet, boots carving trenches in the hardpan. First blood to Viltrum. Apocalypse examined the crack in his armor, watched it seal through molecular reconstruction, and smiled. Good. You're not arrogant despite your strength. You fight smart. This will be educational. I don't fight to educate, Craig said. I fight to win. She accelerated to combat speed, not her maximum, but fast enough that normal eyes couldn't track her, and engaged in close quarters. Punch, elbow, knee, headbutt. Viltrumite martial arts perfected over millennia, applied with lethal precision. Each strike carried enough force to demolish buildings. Apocalypse blocked with his multiple arms, his celestial armor absorbing and redistributing kinetic energy. But she was pushing him back, dominating the engagement. He tried to grapple, to use his additional limbs for leverage. She was too fast, too experienced. She'd fought beings with extra arms before, knew how to exploit the coordination challenges they created. She trapped one arm, broke it at the elbow, and drove her knee into his face hard enough to spray ancient blood across the desert floor. The watching heroes flinched. Apocalypse was losing. The invincible ancient god was being systematically dismantled by a Viltrumite general who fought with the cold efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times before. She's toying with him, Omni-Man observed, showing him the gap between his power and Viltrumite combat mastery. When she's satisfied, he understands, she'll kill him quickly. Can't we help? Mark asked desperately. No, single combat rules. Anyone who interferes forfeits Earth immediately. Omni-Man's fist clenched. We watch. That's all we can do. Apocalypse staggered backward, his broken arm already healing, but the damage accumulating faster than he could repair. Craig was relentless, giving him no space to think, no time to adapt. Every second he spent regenerating was a second she spent inflicting new wounds. She was showing him what Viltrumites had learned over centuries of conquest. Overwhelming, sustained aggression defeated most opponents before they could mount effective resistance. But Apocalypse hadn't survived 5,000 years by fighting fair. He drove his spear arm into the ground and channeled celestial energy directly into Earth's crust. The molecular bonds holding the desert floor together came apart at his command. The ground beneath Craig liquefied, becoming a quicksand trap reinforced with gravitational manipulation that tried to drag her down. She flew upward, escaping the trap, exactly as he'd intended. While she was focused on avoiding the ground, Apocalypse fired his dimensional blade, not at her current position, but at where she'd be in 0.3 seconds based on her trajectory. The blade phased through normal space and emerged directly in her flight path. Craig saw it coming and twisted, but even Viltrumite reflexes had limits. The blade scored a line across her shoulder, cutting through her uniform and into Viltrumite flesh. Not deep, she'd moved enough to make it a glancing blow, but enough to draw blood. First blood to evolution. Craig touched the wound with her finger, examined the blood, and her expression shifted. Not fear, but recognition. You're learning, adapting. Every exchange teaches you more about how Viltrumites fight. Precisely, Apocalypse said, his broken arm fully healed now. That is what evolution means. Every challenge makes me stronger. Every attack gives me data. You are powerful, General, but you are fighting the same way you fought 800 years ago. I am fighting differently than I fought 8 seconds ago. Then I'll kill you in the next 8 seconds. She moved faster than before, pushing toward her true maximum speed. At this velocity, she was nearly invisible, moving at significant fractions of light speed, up her hitting with impacts that released nuclear-level energy. Her fists became blurs, each punch carrying civilization-ending force. Apocalypse's celestial armor shattered under the onslaught. His restructured flesh split. His ancient bones cracked. But with each hit, his molecular sensors recorded data: velocity, force, angle of attack, timing between strikes. His 5,000-year-old mind processed the information faster than quantum computers, identifying patterns, predicting rhythms. The 47th punch he caught. Craig's fist stopped dead in his palm, her momentum arrested by molecular manipulation, so precise it could have caught a photon. For the first time since the fight began, genuine surprise crossed her face. Impossible, she breathed. Inevitable, Apocalypse corrected. You move fast, but you move in patterns. And patterns can be predicted, analyzed, exploited. He yanked her forward and drove his hammer arm into her sternum with everything he had. The impact was catastrophic. Craig rocketed backward at hypersonic speeds, crashing through 3 mesas before slamming into a mountain hard enough to crack it in half. The shock wave from the impact rattled windows in Las Vegas 70 miles away. The watchers on the ridge erupted in shocked exclamations. Mark felt hope ignite in his chest. His father's expression remained neutral, but Omni-Man's eyes tracked the dust cloud where Craig had disappeared, calculating, assessing. She's not dead, he said quietly. He was right. Craig emerged from the rubble, her uniform shredded, blood streaming from her nose and mouth, one eye swollen shut. But she was smiling. Actually smiling. In the kind of expression warriors wore when they finally found a worthy opponent. Now we fight for real, she said. What followed was beyond human comprehension. 2 beings operating at the absolute peak of power, both fighting with lethal intent, both refusing to yield. They collided in the sky and fell to earth like meteors. They crashed through the desert floor into subterranean caverns, their battle illuminating ancient darkness. They broke through into the mantle itself, fighting in molten rock that would have vaporized normal matter, trading blows that could crack tectonic plates. Apocalypse grew new limbs as old ones were destroyed. Craig's Viltrumite healing factor worked overtime, sealing wounds that would have killed gods. The desert became a lunar landscape of craters and canyons. Seismic monitors registered earthquakes across 3 states, and still they fought, neither gaining decisive advantage, both demonstrating the kind of power that made civilizations bow or burn. Mark couldn't look away. None of them could. They were watching the future of their world being decided through violence so extreme, it redefined what combat meant. They're going to kill each other, War Woman whispered. No, Omni-Man said. One of them will win. The question is whether Earth will survive the victory. Apocalypse was adapting. Every exchange made him slightly faster, slightly stronger, slightly more attuned to Viltrumite combat patterns. But Craig had something he couldn't copy. 800 years of actually using these techniques against enemies who fought back with equal skill. And experience trumped adaptation when the gap was large enough. She caught him in a grapple, used his own leverage against him, and drove him into the ground with enough force to create a crater visible from orbit. While he was stunned, she grabbed his head in both hands and began to twist. Viltrumite's strength applied to the breaking point of even celestial-enhanced biology. Apocalypse's vertebrae began to crack. You're strong, Craig acknowledged, breathing hard, blood dripping from dozens of wounds. Stronger than almost anything I've fought. But you're alone. One being, no matter how ancient, can't match an empire forged through millennia of warfare. That's what you don't understand. Viltrumites aren't strong because we're individually powerful. We're strong because we've perfected the art of killing powerful things. Apocalypse's eyes blazed even as his neck approached the breaking point. And you don't understand that evolution is never alone. Energy erupted from his body, not celestial technology, but something older, deeper. Mutant power channeled through 5,000 years of accumulated genetic mutations. Molecular bonds across his entire body restructured simultaneously. His mass increased exponentially. His strength multiplied. His size grew to 20 feet, then 30, a giant of living metal and cosmic fury. Craig tried to maintain the hold, but the sheer increase in mass broke her grip. Apocalypse grabbed her with all four arms and squeezed, applying pressure that even Viltrumite durability struggled to withstand. "I am evolution," he roared, his voice shaking the atmosphere. "I am 5,000 years of adaptation given form. I am what your empire fears most, something that gets stronger the more you fight it." He hurled Craig into the stratosphere with enough force to break the sound barrier multiple times over. Then he launched himself after her, accelerating to match her velocity, catching her before she could recover. They fought in the upper atmosphere, their combat creating sonic booms that rolled across the continent. Airplane pilots reported seeing gods at war. Satellites captured images of two beings locked in combat that defied physics. And on the ground, Mark Grayson watched his world's fate hang in the balance between an ancient mutant's evolution and an empire's perfected violence. The fight lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of sustained combat at levels that would have killed normal beings in seconds. By the end, both combatants were barely standing. Apocalypse had shrunk back to 15 feet, his celestial armor shattered in a dozen places, his ancient flesh barely holding together through sheer will. Craig's Viltrumite healing factor was exhausted, her body covered in wounds that would take days to fully repair, one arm hanging useless at her side. They stood 50 feet apart in what remained of the Nevada desert, now a landscape of craters and molten glass, and faced each other with something approaching respect. "I cannot defeat you," Craig said, her voice hoarse, "not without destroying myself in the process. And you cannot defeat me. We're too evenly matched." "Agreed," Apocalypse said, equally exhausted. "You are the finest warrior I've fought in centuries. Your empire trained you well." "So what now?" Craig asked. "The challenge was to the death. Winner claims Earth." Apocalypse was silent for a long moment, his ancient mind calculating possibilities. Then slowly he began to smile. Perhaps the challenge itself was flawed. Perhaps the question isn't who claims Earth, but whether Earth needs to be claimed at all. "Explain." "You seek to conquer this world for your empire. I seek to test it for evolutionary potential. But what if," he gestured to the watching heroes, to Mark and Omni-Man standing together, to the millions watching around the globe. "What if we've both been approaching this incorrectly? What if Earth's value lies not in being claimed, but in being free to evolve naturally?" Craig's eyes narrowed. "Yosh, you're proposing we both withdraw? Leave Earth independent?" "I'm proposing we both recognize that this world has something neither empire nor evolution can create through force, genuine choice. Look at them." Apocalypse pointed at the heroes. "They chose to defend their world knowing they'd die. They chose to face us despite understanding how outmatched they were. That kind of courage, that kind of defiance, it cannot be created through conquest or genetic manipulation. It must be earned through freedom." "The Empire doesn't do freedom," Craig said. "Then perhaps the Empire is approaching extinction through ideological stagnation, just as I warned." Apocalypse's voice carried the weight of ages. "Your plague proved you're not invincible. Your slow conquest proves you're not as strong as you were. It may be, just maybe, Earth represents something your empire needs more than another colony world. A reminder that strength without choice is merely slavery wearing a crown." On the ridge, Mark heard every word through his enhanced hearing. He looked at his father, saw the conflict written across Nolan's face, and understood that Apocalypse was offering something impossible. A way out that preserved Earth's independence without either empire or evolution claiming victory. Craig was silent for a long time. Then, "If I return to Viltrum and recommend Earth be left alone, The High Command will ask why. What do I tell them? Tell them, Omni-Man said, flying down to land between them, that Earth produces warriors worth recruiting, not enslaving. Tell them my son is proof that human Viltrumite hybrids exceed pure genetic lines. I tell them this world is more valuable as an independent ally than as a conquered colony. And tell them that trying to take it by force will cost the Empire warriors it can't afford to lose. Craig studied Nolan for a long moment. You've chosen, then, Earth over Empire. I've chosen, Nolan agreed, to prove that the choice itself is a false dichotomy. Earth can be both, ally to Viltrum without being subject to it, the way your ancestors intended before the plague made you paranoid and desperate. It was a gamble, a desperate appeal to Viltrumite history before fear and scarcity had turned them into conquerors. And from the expression on Craig's face, it was working. I'll take your proposal to High Command, she said finally. Earth gets provisional independence. 6 months to prove it can defend itself and contribute to galactic stability. If you succeed, you remain free. If you fail, if you become a threat or a liability, the Empire comes in force. Understood? Understood, Omni-Man said. Craig looked at Apocalypse. And you? What's your play? Apocalypse gazed at the ruined desert, at the heroes, at humanity watching from billions of screens around the world. For the first time in 5,000 years, uncertainty crossed his ancient features. I will remain, he said slowly, not as conqueror, not as God, but as observer. Teacher, perhaps. I will test this world's champions, not through culling, but through challenge. Those who seek strength can find me. Those who wish to remain weak are free to do so. Evolution through choice, not through force. That's not very evolutionary of you, Craig observed. Perhaps I'm evolving too, Apocalypse admitted. 5,000 years of one philosophy. Maybe it's time to try another. Craig nodded once, sharply. Then she turned to her waiting command vessel and flew toward orbit without another word. Earth had earned its reprieve, not through victory, but through proving it was worth more free than conquered. As her ship disappeared into the sky, Mark landed beside his father and Apocalypse. 3 beings who represented different visions for humanity's future, all of them temporarily aligned in letting that future remain unchosen. What now? Mark asked. Omni-Man looked at his son, then at the watching world, then at the stars where somewhere an empire deliberated Earth's fate. No, now we prove we deserve the chance they've given us. We get stronger, we prepare, and we hope that when the real test comes, we're ready. And what is the real test? Apocalypse asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Staying free, Omni-Man said, without becoming what we fought against. The sun set over the Nevada desert, painting the ruins of their battlefield in shades of red and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, Viltrumite scrutiny, Apocalypse's teaching, the 1,000 other threats that existed in a universe where Earth was no longer protected by ignorance. But tonight, for just this moment, humanity remained its own master. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. The world changed after Nevada, not overnight, but in the slow, inevitable way that tectonic plates shift, unseen until the earthquake arrives. Apocalypse kept his word, establishing himself in the Himalayas where seekers of power could find him, but ordinary humans need not fear. He tested champions who came willingly, pushed them to their limits, and surprisingly, genuinely tried to teach rather than call. Some broke, more survived. All of them emerged stronger, carrying the knowledge that evolution was a choice, not a sentence. Omni-Man remained on Earth, living in his downtown apartment, training his son, and serving as reluctant liaison between humanity and the Viltrumite Empire that watched from the stars. He'd crossed a line the day he chose Earth, and there was no uncrossing it. But in choosing, he'd found something he'd spent 20 years pretending didn't matter. Purpose that was his, not assigned. Mark continued growing into his power, Ida becoming the bridge his father had claimed he'd built cynically, but that he'd actually created through love. Half human, half Viltrumite, belonging fully to neither but trusted, cautiously skeptically, by both. And Earth learned to stand on its own. Not as conquered territory waiting for annexation, not as a laboratory for forced evolution, but as a world that had stared at gods and empires and refused to bow. The cost would come due eventually. Craig's 6-month deadline loomed, and Viltrum didn't forget or forgive easily. But humanity had bought itself time to prepare, to strengthen, to prove that freedom was worth the price. In the end, three forces had collided over Earth's fate: Viltrumite conquest through absolute power, Apocalypse's evolution through selective pressure, and humanity's stubborn insistence on self-determination. But none had won completely, none had lost absolutely. Instead, they'd reached the rarest of outcomes. Détente born not from weakness, but from grudging recognition that some worlds were worth more as question marks than exclamation points. The invincible universe had tested itself and survived. Barely. Apocalypse had found something ancient mutants rarely discovered: uncertainty about whether strength alone defined survival. And somewhere among the stars, an empire of warriors learned that conquest had limits when the conquered refused to stay conquered. Hope endured. Power evolved. And Earth remained, free, defiant, and dancing on the knife's edge between extinction and transcendence, exactly where the strongest civilizations always